With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Members of Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet publicly rallied behind him after his chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, resigned over the decision to appoint Lord Peter Mandelson as ambassador to Washington despite his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Senior figures including Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband, David Lammy, Rachel Reeves, and others pledged support, urging party unity. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sawar called for Starmer to resign. Though the backing has bought Starmer time, he remains unpopular over border and economic issues. Poor polling may deter a leadership challenge that could trigger an early election favoring Nigel Farage's Reform UK. A February 5th Capitol Military Political Symposium in Beijing drew attention because no full generals appeared in state media footage, only 7 lieutenant generals and 13 major generals, fueling analysis that China's senior military purges may have hollowed out PLA leadership. Past attendees, including Miao Hua and He Hung-jun, were later purged, and other officers have disappeared from view. Analysts cited a politics of public appearances, noting smaller senior officer entourages around Xi Jinping and changes in event format that may obscure personnel signals. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban accuses Brussels and Kiev of declaring war on Hungary, amid reports the EU plans to offer Ukraine a form of limited or membership light status by 2027, despite opposition from some member states. Politico reported that EU officials are considering relaxing admission criteria and that Orban is viewed as the main obstacle, with suggestions his removal could be sought through elections or suspension of Hungary's voting rights. Orban urged supporters to mobilize for April's parliamentary election. Ukraine seeks EU accession as part of a U.S.-mediated peace deal, though it has publicly rejected second-tier membership. Russian authorities confirmed taking action against Telegram, accusing it of failing to comply with national laws after users reported widespread service disruptions. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Roskomnadzor began restricting the app because companies must follow Russian legislation. A Moscow court fined Telegram 10.8 million rubles for failing to remove banned content. Telegram founder Pavel Durov criticized the restrictions, saying the platform supports free speech and privacy. Russian officials have accused Telegram and WhatsApp of refusing lawful data requests while complying with foreign intelligence services and have promoted the domestic Max Messenger as a secure alternative. Nigel Farage announced that Reform UK is preparing for a potential early general election, citing the crisis facing Prime Minister Keir Starmer over the Mandelson-Epstein scandal. Speaking in Birmingham, Farage said he would soon unveil a shadow cabinet, including several recent Conservative defectors, and begin recruiting parliamentary candidates. He suggested the government's troubles could accelerate an election previously expected by 2027. Farage said the campaign would focus on immigration, economic decline, energy policy, national sovereignty, and opposition to net zero policies, arguing that both Labour and the Conservatives have failed Britain and the reform would act in the national interest. Keir Starmer faced harsh criticism at PMQs.
I'll tell you what other action we've taken, Mr. Speaker. Along with the Safeguarding Minister, I and this government have introduced the most far-reaching violence against women and girls strategy. And I'll tell you what else we've done. This government has introduced a pay rise for millions of working-class women. What did the Leader of the Opposition do? She opposed it. This government's introducing greater protection for women at work. What did the Leader of the Opposition do? She opposed it. And I'll tell you what else she opposes. This government removing the disgusting rape clause that they put in place.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
It's early evening in Loughelly, and as many as 100 young people gathered in the park. Some of the local residents see the young people as a problem, and while many people simply avoid the park on Friday evening, the Salvation Army has been taking a different approach.
Some young people are out on the street because they don't feel safe at home, or they may have parents that are working all the time and they're home alone a lot.
Hello, how are you?
We see so many young people in crisis. We see so many young people turn into alcohol and drugs, and it's because there's not enough support.
We come and shower today for something to do with our friends.
They like to have a laugh, they like to joke around.
Are you okay? Be careful.
And the conversations that we have surrounding school and family, alcohol, drug use, can then go on to, okay, so how can we support you?
Throughout the UK and Ireland, the Salvation Army has been recruiting and training detached youth workers. But youth workers and the resources they need are scarce. Local authority funding has been drastically cut in recent decades, and spending on young people's services is only a quarter of what it was at its peak. All this shows the importance of the Salvation Army's work.
She won't tell anyone because she'll forget in like 2 seconds.
Our aims are to build relationships, to get to know young people, to be a constant in their lives, to be a safe adult, because not all young people have a safe adult.
It's not what we're here for, it's actually...
So if we can be that constant in their lives, during the ups, during the downs of their lives, that's a major thing.
What is Australia's deadliest predator? The one that hits with more than 30 Gs of force. Strikes in under a second. Leaves catastrophic injury in its wake. You won't hear it, you won't see it, not until it's too late. Australia's deadliest predator isn't found in the wild. It's on our roads. Speeding is the killer.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Very, very good morning for the UK. 8 past, almost 9 past 6. You've slept in. Get up now. Get up now. I can say that because I've been up for ages and it's not cold. So there goes my headphones again. I just love my headphones. If you're in Australia, in say New South Wales and Victoria, you'll be heading home, I would think. Queensland, you've still got to wait for another hour. Okay, it's 9 past 4 in Queensland. Israel is advancing annexation of the West Bank. An announcement came last Sunday, days ahead of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to the US. More than 500,000 Israelis live in settlements and outposts in the West Bank, which are illegal under international law. About 3 million Palestinians live in the territory. Approved by the Cabinet in its final draft, the bill is to be voted on by the Israeli Knesset. When it passes, Israel will have the authority to impose Israeli law in areas of the West Bank that have been under Palestinian control, or PA control, especially laws regulating building permits. Now, the bill originally introduced in 2023 and known as the Antiquities Bill concerns dozens of Palestinian historical sites in the West Bank. In addition, the Israeli cabinet decided on Sunday to allow Israelis to purchase real estate in those areas, paving the way for future Israeli settlement in Palestinian demographic centres. Washington has yet to formally comment on the new measures. International condemnation has been muted. Wonder why that would be. Does this not further undermine the plans for a peace and Trump's magnificent board. That's right, the peace board. What's going to happen with it? Do I have a deal for you? It's big and beautiful. All that sort of stuff, but rhetoric at the moment. Talk to Hani Dweik about this decision and its significance. Hani is a Palestinian Jordanian specialising in communication and advocacy in the field of humanitarian and development sector. He's been living and working in the Middle East and North Africa and Europe. He's written various op-eds on topics such as covering socio-political issues on current and historical affairs in the MENA region, such as women's minorities and democracy. He's also worked with renowned organisations, for example, Norwegian Refugee Council, which is NRC, the Swedish Dialogue Institute for the Middle East and North Africa, and Doctors Without Borders, which is just one of those magnificent organisations. Hani, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you, Mike, for hosting me, and thank you, everyone.
What are some of the points of concern about all what's happening that you could just rattle off the top of your head at the moment?
Well, to be quite honest, Mike, this is not a surprise. I mean, this was inevitable ever since the creation of Israel in 1948. And then later on in 1967, with the occupation of the West Bank and the Golan Heights and Sinai and Gaza Strip. Now, a few years ago, if you remember, they already annexed the Golan Heights, which is already against the international law, because according to the international law, the Golan Heights is an occupied territories that belong to Syria. Nevertheless, they annexed it and no one said anything. The same thing goes to the West Bank now. They annexed it and it was inevitable, and everybody knew that they were on the way to do that. I mean, the Israeli governments they're not hiding it. I mean, they're showing a map of Greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates, and they're not going to stop at the West Bank, unfortunately. Again, Israel is probably the only country in the world that does not have specific borders in their constitution. They do not believe in borders at this stage, so they will go on and on and on. And I wonder when would the international community would say, right, enough. There has been talk about peace, but what is the meaning of peace when there is no justice? The Israeli and the Palestinians have been on negotiations, peace negotiations since 1993, and nothing has changed. Actually, as a matter of fact, ever since the so-called Oslo Accords and later on, the number of settlements in the Bank have multiplied and quadrupled numbers, and still nothing has changed on the ground. I mean, there has been only talk, and nothing is changing. And what is worrying is that for the people in the West Bank is, what is their status now? What would be happening when the West Bank is, officially being annexed to Israel? Would they be treated as Israeli citizens? Will they be having the same rights as the other Jewish Israeli citizens? I doubt it. So it's a bit messy, and nothing is clear at the moment.
Could you tell me, Hani, if there's been much international condemnation, or because we heard prior to just about everything that how the world was appalled, and there were governments around the world, making a lot of noise. I haven't heard a whole lot of noise at the moment. Maybe you could alleviate my doubt in those particular governments.
You're absolutely right, Mike. I mean, there hasn't been any kind of strong condemnation about what was happening in Palestine, and I think that goes back to because they've been preparing us for the last couple of years, ever since actually even before the war on Gaza started, is that there has been talks in the Knesset, there has been talks among Israeli politicians that the West Bank is a part of Israel, and that they will never give it up, and that's why they continue building settlements, and the obviously the American government is supporting the Israeli government in this, and nothing will change. Nothing will change, unfortunately, unless there is a strong stance on Israeli action towards the West Bank. And mind you, that last year, when a lot of countries recognized the state of Palestine according to the 1967 borders, that was a smokescreen. It was just talk, and as they say, talk is cheap. I mean, nothing on the ground happened. There was no condemnation, no sanctions, none so ever. So again, unfortunately, nothing will change.
Yeah, I'm just, I've got to actually saw jaw with it keeps dropping and hitting the ground. What about the Palestinians living in the West Bank? How will they be affected?
Well, that's exactly what I said earlier. I mean, well, legally, the Palestinians living in the West Bank, they are either a holder of Palestinian citizenship or Jordanian citizenship. So what will happen to them? Will they be displaced to Jordan? Will they be displaced to Syria or other parts of the world? We don't know. But the thing is, the Israeli government is not clear about the status of the Palestinians there. I doubt, and I highly doubt, that the Israelis, giving their history, that they will include these Palestinians into their state, because they know that will jeopardize the Jewishness of the state. So they will not include them in their citizenship. The same goes actually even to the Arab Israelis. I mean, there has been talks about expelling the Arab Israelis in the 1948 lands, as they say. So again, the legal status is very blurry at the moment, and I don't know, let's wait and see what the Israelis will say. But as I said, I doubt that they will keep them in the West Bank. There has been already attempts in the last couple of years where their villages have been burned, people been persecuted, pushed away from homes. So the trend is there.
In Bethlehem, which is the birthplace basically of Christianity, Hebron and the rest of the West Bank, Palestinians are feeling quite powerless, aren't they, to stop what they see as a creeping annexation.
I'm sorry, say that again.
In Bethlehem, Hebron, and the rest of the West Bank, Palestinians are feeling quite powerless to stop what they feel is basically creeping annexation.
Absolutely, because the situation. I mean, the political situation in the West Bank has been like all these lands. They are territories A, B, C. It's quite complicated. So now all these entities are under the Israeli control. Now, what will happen? We don't know. I know for a fact that there has been the seizing of lands in Hebron and in Bethlehem. So will these people be confiscated? Again, it's very blurry, and the United States and the United Nations are not doing anything or saying anything. And I wonder why, to be quite honest.
All right, tell me, why do you think? I mean, at the moment we have the governments around the world seem to be swaying quite towards, in inverted commas, towards the Israeli way of thinking, line of thinking. What's your views? Uh, why are the tell me this? I mean, why is the UN and why are other countries this they've again you said before words are cheap. Why aren't they doing more?
Well, too many reasons, but I think first of all, many countries around the world are basically there is this what we call it media fatigue, causes fatigue. People are, governments are basically they just want to end this Palestinian cause. And once and for all. So they are saying, all right, let it have it. So we end it. We displace all these Palestinians to neighboring countries or other countries around the world, and then that's it. And then they force Israel into the region as this is the reality. You have to deal with it. And many, many, many times I've been told that Israel is a reality. You have to deal with it. And it's like, fine, it is a reality, but what about the Palestinian reality? What will happen to them? And again, knowing for a fact the strong Zionist lobby and the Jewish lobby in the US and other European countries and how they affect the decision making in those countries, that also played a pivotal role in not taking any actions against Israel. And we saw that clearly with Israel committing atrocities and a genocide in Gaza, and still none of these countries place sanctions on them. So again, this is something that the Israelis, they knew for a fact that no one will do anything, and that's why they went ahead with it. Again, I don't know what to expect, but my heart goes for the people who are living there, who don't know what their future is going to be.
It's actually, I'm just reading as you were talking, so I'm doing two things at once. I can multitask, but some don't believe me. But I'm just reading this here, and it's very interesting. It says, it is concluded the ultimate goal is to establish a Jewish quarter linking settlements to the Ibrahimi mosque by emptying Palestinian neighborhoods of their residents. Would you agree on that one?
Well, again, whether I agree or not, it doesn't mean anything. It is a
Well,
status quo. The Israel. I'm
Would
sorry.
you, I mean, this is just someone foreseeing the future, but from what you've been saying and what we are reading, um, this would probably be an accurate statement that they are going to try and establish a Jewish quarter linking settlements to the Ibrahimi mosque
Yeah.
by emptying Palestinian neighborhoods of their residents. I mean,
It is. It is already there. I mean, Jewish settlers in Hebron have been there for decades, and they're expanding, and they have been protected by the Israeli army and the Israeli authorities, and they were expanding. And I know for a fact because my father is originally from Hebron, and we have properties in downtown Hebron that we could not access there.
it's incredible, isn't it? All this. What's happened to Donald Trump is going to have this great peace plan. What's happened to his great? I mean, by the way, it was never going to work anyway. But this would seem to be going exactly against what was sprouted by Donald Trump and the coalition of the willing that had to pay $1 billion to join. I don't understand. I'm looking at this going, wow, this is just incredible. It's we have one group making noise, saying words, and then we have on the other side just a bulldozing of communities to set up their own.
Yes, and again, The Israelis are doing this for decades now because they have been protected and excused by the American government and the EU member states. And of course, they talk about peace plans, the Abraham Accords, and the rest of it. But the reality is, what Israeli wants, the Israeli gets. And regarding the Palestinians, none of their demands have been met, whether in the West Bank or Gaza. No talk about the right to return for the people who were expelled in 1948 and in 1967. And again, from my perspective, there will be no peace without justice. And they can, maybe governments can make peace with Israel. I mean, we saw that with Egypt, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, but the people will never accept this without justice, without giving the rights for Palestinians. For example, Egypt has had a peace deal with Israel since the late 70s, and yet going to Egypt, talking to Egyptians, and I have many Egyptian friends, they don't accept it, and they would never accept Israel because they know that injustices has been upon Palestinians, and they will never accept Israel unless there is justice for Palestinians.
Yep, it's we need to, as I said last time we first chatted, we need to start becoming more specific as we move along and start getting into this, because we've got to keep talking about it. And we have to try and exert some pressure. I don't think we can at the moment, although that will change as we get back to the days of the size of TNT, which will happen very shortly, we hope. And once you do that, then we have a large network, then start pushing and asking answers and holding people accountable. Because we're talking about communities, families, nationalities. I mean, they're just truly just being bulldozed. And where's the spirit of this ceasefire? Where's the spirit of the Board of Peace? There is none. And it would seem that they are all capitulating to the will, the wishes of Israel, which is terrible. Hani, if somebody wants to find out more about you or get in contact with you, how do they do that?
I think you have my email with you, so you can just contact me anytime, and I'm willing to answer any questions or regarding the subject matter or any other subject.
Hani, it's always a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Hani Dweik here on The World Today. Coming up next, Robbie Barwick.
Surprisingly, the blueprint for transformation is woven into the United Nations Agenda 2030, ostensibly a vision for a better world.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I say again that taken together, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Climate Agreement provide humanity with a master plan for a sustainable way of life on this planet.
New York City, late September 2024, the setting for the United Nations Summit of the Future, a gathering of member nations to reinforce and accelerate Agenda 2030 and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. The plan has a broad spectrum and is full of worthy ambition. But behind those deliberately bright and colourful boxes lies a darker theme, a shifting of influence and potentially power towards unelected world bodies. The strategy goes back well into the last century, and pressure is growing, because the goals are far behind targets set at the grand relaunching in 2015.
17 inspiring Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Our aim is clear, our mission is possible, and our destination is in our sights.
To end poverty and hunger, address inequality, protect our planet, and build a life of dignity for all.
It appears to be a noble and ambitious programme for a perfect world. And who could argue with those aspirations? But critics insist the goals are not what they seem. Alex Newman is a journalist and broadcaster who's been investigating the issue for 15 years. He has his own way of interpreting the rhetoric.
You have to learn to speak what I call UNEs. You have to know what the terms mean if you want to truly understand what is being discussed. When they talk about peacekeeping forces or the peacekeeping role of the United Nations, they're actually talking about the war-making capabilities of the United Nations. So you have this Orwellian doublespeak. When they talk about transparency, more often than not, they're talking about eliminating your privacy. Human rights is another very, very good example. They make very clear in this document that your rights can be restricted under the guise of public order or morality or whatever the case may be. And so they're saying, here's your rights, but by the way, they're not really rights. We can revoke them at any time. The UN is filled with contradictions like this. Like, for example, when they talk about gender equality, right? A normal person in the Western world thinks gender equality means a woman has a right to earn money, to own property, to have all the rights and privileges that a man would have. When you look at the individuals who lead this movement within the UN, you're talking about radical feminists. You're talking about people who are very interested in dissolving the nuclear family. As you dig into these goals, it's very clear we're dealing with something far more nefarious. Once you look past the marketing slogans, the kind of warm and fuzzy, we're going to end hunger, which again is just window dressing, you realize that this is actually a blank check for totalitarian global control.
Author and campaigner, the late Rosa Koire, called out the plan more than a decade ago.
It is the biggest public relations scam in the history of the world. But it's far more than that. It's a blueprint. It is the action plan to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all information, all energy, all means of production, and all human beings in the world.
Not the station for people who label truth as misinformation just because they don't like it.
For facts and truth.
Today's News Talk. The World Today.
And welcome back. Important legislation was rushed through the House of Representatives, I think, today. The ASIO Amendment Bill. That's number 2, 2025. Now, this proposes to make ASIO's compulsory questioning powers permanent by removing the sunset clause set for March 2027. Now, while expanding the scope to include offences such as sabotage and promoting communal violence, it also apparently strengthens oversight and administrative safeguards. Now, there's many concerns about the legislation, including its threats to civil liberties. Now, critics argue the legislation, combined with other security reforms in 2026, could stifle political debate, protest rights, and, of course, freedom of speech. Robbie Barwick has been looking at this legislation. He and others have major problems with this legislation. Robbie is a long-time executive member of the Australian Citizens Party, formerly Citizens Electoral Council. He is the party's media spokesman, National Research Director, editor of Australian Alert Service, and presenter of the weekly show, which will get a Nobel Peace Prize and an Academy Award all in one, the Citizens Report. Robbie Barwick, before we get into how magnificent you are on camera, I just want to play this clip. This goes for 3 minutes, and this is what we're talking about today.
If you were alarmed that in January the Albanese government, with the assistance of the Liberals, was able to ram through a bill that empowered the government to ban groups, such as groups that accused Israel of genocide, with powers that were retrospective, that constitutional experts said could be used against political parties, then pay attention, it's about to get worse. The Citizens Party is trying to blow the whistle on the fact that right now before Parliament, there's a bill, the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation Amendment Bill number 2, which is on the notice paper to be debated this week. We must stop this bill, because this bill will make Australia a permanent police state. Right now we are a police state. We've been so since 2003, when ASIO, the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, was given powers to be a secret police. Prior to that, ASIO was only ever an intelligence gathering organisation, but it was given these extraordinary police powers to detain and question people without a warrant, and question anybody, not just suspects, including children as young as 14, without the right to silence. And the government of the day said these were absolutely necessary in the event there was an imminent terrorist threat, and ASIO had to be able to get the information it needed to stop that terrorist threat. And although that was a scary argument straight after 9/11, the Parliament of the day balked at it. They weren't happy with giving them these powers. The opposition leader then at the time, Simon Crean, the Labor Party leader, called these police state powers. And they only agreed to give ASIO these powers after the government added a sunset clause, so they would be temporary powers that would expire. Since then, the powers have never expired. Every time the sunset clause has come up, the governments of the day have renewed them, and they've expanded the powers even more to include ASIO being able to detain and question people on matters other than to do with imminent terrorist threats. So this began the normalisation of these powers. And they added a power that said journalists can be jailed for up to 10 years for reporting on an ASIO operation. And now, before Parliament, is a bill that will expand the scope of questioning even more to include literally everything ASIO does. So now it's secret police powers that were once promised to us that were only to be used in extraordinary last resort circumstances have been normalised that they'll apply to everything. And they're going to repeal the sunset clause so these powers are permanent. Follow the link below. We need you to go to our website, sign the petition, call your members of parliament and your senators in your state and demand that they vote no to this bill to turn Australia into a permanent police state.
Robbie Barwick, thank you for joining us. I am just appalled. And isn't it interesting how COVID, and you move forward, and some countries drop back a bit, but they're all at the moment, they're almost at the pointy end of this whole exercise, and they're all doing it now at the same time. It's very scary. In Australia, though, it passed the lower house with few concerns. What do you make of that?
Well, when it comes to these security matters, we have a uni party. What we call the uni party, which is Labor and Liberals acting in lockstep. You always see that on the big issues, and the big issues tend to be anything to do with the banks, which is one of the reasons that's a big issue for us. Foreign policy and this security policy stuff, because when it comes to security policy, you're not just talking about ASIO, you're talking about the apparatus ASIO is part of, which is Five Eyes. And there is nobody in the parliament that dares to question how this apparatus works. It's just given carte blanche. When ASIO was first set up, Mike, there was a lot of skepticism about it. There was a lot of skepticism for decades. Gough Whitlam's Attorney General, Lionel Murphy, raided ASIO in the 70s. The Labor Party, back when it was a working class party, really did have a lot of suspicion about this agency. Paul Keating was the last guy who's long in the tooth now. He expressed skepticism about ASIO back in 2017, but you do not see that anymore. And so when it comes to Bondi, the Bondi massacre, the horrific Bondi massacre of 15 people, mostly Jewish, within a day, ASIO admitted that they knew the perpetrator. There was instant questions about that. People saying, well, how could that happen? How could this be allowed to happen then? Able to happen if ASIO actually knew the perpetrators? But within a few days, that questioning had stopped. And instead of, we put out a release this week demanding Mike Burgess, the head of ASIO, either resign or be fired because of ASIO's catastrophic failings that made sure Bondi happened. But instead of holding ASIO to account at all, our government has just got on with giving them more powers. And extraordinarily, some of those powers were what was rammed through Parliament in 24 hours in January in the bill that can ban so-called hate groups, because now ASIO has the power to recommend groups be banned, right? So it's got more power again. And this bill that passed literally today in the House, hasn't gone through the Senate yet, as I explained in that video, this gives them even more powers because it expands the scope of what they can use these extraordinary powers for. So they're no longer just life or death scenarios of mass casualty terrorist attacks, which was the original justification. Now they can use it for literally everything they do. It's now a matter of course that ASIO can grab people off the street and interrogate them, children as young as 14, without judicial warrants, without the right to silence. That's now a matter of course. And the government has taken off this sunset clause. So only 2 objections were put up in the House in the debate, and both of them came from Teals. One of them related to putting in protections for these poor kids, right? The hypothetical 14-year-old girl who may find herself in an ASIO interrogation room, right, being scared to death by ASIO officers. So one of the Teals wanted to put in some more protections for the children that could get questioned. And Zali Steggall, another of the Teals, wanted to keep the sunset clause, and he quoted the Law Council of Australia why keeping the sunset clause was both so important. The government just dismissed it. Tony Burke gets up there and gives an oh so sincere speech. Oh, we don't want to do this. This is the last thing we want to do, but the need is, the danger is there. We have to have the powers because the danger is there. And most extraordinary, Mike, when they actually took the vote on the bill, the final vote in the House, it did not even go to a division. Right? It just passed on the voices. Such is the uncritical thinking of the Community Party when it comes to this kind of power.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, we used to have opposition, but they're not anymore. You see what happens when you crossbreed. but it's terrible. Because okay, I'll ask you this question first and get to the next bit. What relevance does this have on the Bondi attack?
Very good question. So before 2003, ASIO never had policing powers. It was a secret intelligence service. It had existed since 1949, so essentially 50 years before 9/11, 50 years and a bit. And in that time, it had only ever functioned as an intelligence service. And when it gathered intelligence that was relevant, it took that intelligence to the police, federal police, state police. They acted on the intelligence. Now, the police, of course, had to assess that intelligence and say, and I had a conversation with a very senior former cop the other day about this because I wanted to come out of my ivory tower and not just talk about this in an academic way from a civil liberties standpoint, etc. I thought, okay, let me talk to the police that are involved in dealing with counterterrorism. And I spoke to probably the guy who has had the most experience in busting a terrorist attack, the biggest one ever in Australia. And he made the point to me that when they get intelligence from ASIO, what they have to look for is evidence, because intelligence is not evidence. The police operate under checks and balances. They have to get warrants from a judge to act, and they've got to make sure they have evidence. Now, that's the way the system always worked. After 9/11, we hadn't had a terrorist attack yet. This was even before the Bali bombing in 2002. But early 2002, John Howard introduced these terrorism laws. He unveiled 7 bills, and one of them was the original ASIO bill. And they gave ASIO these extraordinary powers of coercive detention and questioning. And the biggest objection, it was really shocking. Parliament, like I said, balked at it because from a principle standpoint, it's like, okay, we've got a secret intelligence service. We're giving them policing powers. By definition, we are creating a secret police. You don't associate secret police with democracies like Australia. You associate them with totalitarian regimes, right? This was a really serious concern in Parliament at the time. But the government said, well, hang on. In the event of an imminent terrorist attack with a ticking time bomb, you have to be able to get that information to stop it. That's why that and only that, we would not do this otherwise. That scenario requires such extraordinary powers. Anyway, before Parliament eventually accepted that argument, they demanded the sunset clause, and the sunset clause was put on to make them permanent, right? So that's since 2003. So my question about Bondi is, here's ASIO has had a lot of experience since 2003, enormous resources, Mike, and I mean enormous resources. They have these powers, and the perpetrator was not just known to them, they had investigated the perpetrator. And so the question that Australians should be asking before they turn around and give ASIO a blank check, which is what this bill is, the question should be, well, how do you account for your intelligence failing that allowed the Bondi attack to happen? People on your radar able to perpetrate such a horrific attack. Please explain. And outside the Citizens Party, nobody's asking that. And instead, Parliament today gave them a blank check.
It's incredible. And you've actually mentioned, and it got me being a little bit scurrilous here, you said that when they pass on their intelligence, they have to have the evidence. And that makes sense. But you could swing that around by talking about ASIO by saying we have to have evidence that there is intelligence without. But I mean, here's the thing. Open borders, bring everybody in. We're going to grow big, going to be multicultural. If it works so well, why do we need all these security?
All right. Well, I might differ from you on that, because I actually genuinely don't think that's the issue.
But what I mean, truly,
bear in mind, I grew up in the 80s. You're probably a fraction older than me, but that means you would remember this as well. I'm from an immigrant family, but I've never had my Australianness questioned because my immigrant parents and grandparents were English, right? So my grandfather, I remember as a kid in the 80s, the subject that would I love my grandfather. He was a jolly old pommy guy, right? The one subject that would set him off, and I mean set him off, and become a different personality, was the Irish Republican Army. Terrorism. But it wasn't multicultural terrorism, right? It was IRA terrorism. It was white people, fellow Anglo-Saxon Celts, essentially, committing that kind of terrorism. These things tend to happen in waves, and we've always had sort of like a policing intelligence function to try and deal with that. And there's always a political driver that people are most reluctant to deal with, because it's not like in Northern Ireland, if you know the history, the British were all sweetness and light, and those Irish Republican Army Catholics were all evil. It was a much more complicated thing than that, right? And until there was a settlement, you had this terrorism problem. And it was also not as one-sided as people think. So yes, we do have a multicultural society with cultures here from all around the world, right? The one that people think is trouble, in my view, you can't separate that trouble from the fact that we have found ways to go to war in that part of the world, and most of those ways have been completely unjustified. And what it does, it creates a polarizing effect, etc. It's up to the intelligence agencies to, one, be transparent and open with the Australian people and make sure that they're actually doing policing sincerely. And I have a real question mark over that, Mike, because ASIO operates under Five Eyes, which Five Eyes includes, as you probably know, MI6 and the CIA. And at the same time, this is a big question mark I have about ASIO and the Bondi shooters, because the Bondi shooters were ISIS linked or pro-ISIS, right? Now, you remember just before you even brought me on here to do an interview about this, a few months ago, ASIO claimed that all these supposed anti-Semitic attacks in Australia, who was behind them? Iran, right? The terrible Iranians. Within hours of the Bondi massacre, Benjamin Netanyahu was live on television in Australia trying to pin it on Iran. Well, these guys who are pro-ISIS, who turned out to be the perpetrators, that means they're enemies of Iran, complete enemies of Iran. But in the same spirit that our agencies have bought into this anti-Iran agenda, as has the United States, as has the British, etc., all the other Five Eyes countries, Donald Trump last year publicly embraced the former ISIS and Al-Qaeda commander in Syria, who's now the president of Syria. He has not renounced his past in ISIS and Al-Qaeda, that guy, the new president of Syria. We spent in the last few years whitewashing this organization because we cheered on their final win in Syria, their final takeover in Syria. And I'm wondering, given the Five Eyes influence over ASIO, whether that had anything to do with ASIO going soft, in a sense, soft, on the ISIS network phenomenon in Australia, such that they took their eye off the ball. Because explain the contradiction. We are literally cheering on ISIS in Syria to take over Syria. That's what happened in December 2024. And we cheered it on, and Donald Trump publicly embraced the guy. And now it's ISIS, people who are ideological allies of that guy, just shot up 15 people in Bondi. This is why I think the question of multiculturalism is just way too simplistic. There are much bigger things at play here.
I totally agree with you, by the way. What the point I was trying to make is that I think it's there's an overreaction. I think, and we're always going to. I mean, even where I grew up, there was also some rumblings between the Turks and the Italians. That was just part and parcel, but no one went stupid. But now with and in your day, in my day, our population was way less. It was probably at 2/3 what it is now, or even half of what it is now. So, we were a bit sleepy then, but now I do think there are issues. But I think the overreach by the government, and you look at the media, mainstream or even independent media, they play up the terrible, those people that were killed, 15 people, and then the demonstrations and it. How they do it is they make you fear for your safety. If you fear for your safety, a bit like the COVID thing, the narrative or the nudging towards their way of thinking. If you create all these issues that make you fear for your safety and your mortality, to start pushing through laws, as we saw with COVID, push through laws for, say, with terrorism and your safety. And we need all this overreach because it's going to make you safe. Just like the COVID vaccines, they were safe and effective, and that was a lie. So the point I'm making is that and by the way, I have very good friends who are Jewish, and we always have had many friends who are Jewish. My former doctor was Jewish. And then I have some great friends who are from the other parts of the Middle East, Palestinians and so forth. So to my way of thinking, I don't think there's an issue there. The issue is from the media, independent and mainstream, who over hype it up. They create the hysterics. And then you have government, which is part of the plan of all this. They look for that opportunity, or if it's already there, and if they knew about it, then there's other issues. But it's all meant, along with other countries around the world, to bring in this overreach. And you're right, once this overreach is finished, is done, we're finished. How do you see, I mean, truly, if you were, and don't be an alarmist here, but tell me how you feel, how do you see Australia in, let's go 8 months? Because I don't think we need any more than that. I think 6, even 5 months, you're going to find that organisations that speak out against government, they're going to be looked at, they'll be painted as, well, they're bad for your safety. They're bad for this country. We need to make sure that you can't hear them, see them. And in fact, what we should do is probably lock them up. So how do you see Australia in a few months?
Well, you live in a state that's about in Queensland that's about to pass a law in the name of public safety, right? Justified by the threat. We've got to keep you safe from the threat. That and the threat is supposedly terrorism. That among the measures includes sending people to jail for 2 years for literally saying words, and they say what the words are: from the river to the sea. If you say that in Queensland after this bill passes, you can go to jail for 2 years. So, Mike, if you happen to be at some taxi rank next to the Brisbane River, and you hail a cab and say, "Can you take me from the river to the sea at the Gold Coast?" and some cop overhears you, what, are you going to go to jail for 2 years? I mean, this is ludicrous, right? This is how much we have descended into authoritarian madness, right? Because we have accepted this formula of, threat solution thing, right? Problem reaction solution. The age of the Enlightenment, right? Voltaire, I disagree with what you say, but I'll fight to your death for your right to say it. That's all gone. These liberals, this is a liberal government going to do this. What does the word liberal mean? We were always told that liberal meant freedom, right? No, it doesn't exist anymore. Everything is justified now to in the name of this threat. Now, it turns out, Mike, that we did find a politician in Parliament House who actually forcefully spoke out against this ASIO bill. And he started off his speech, and I just want to read just 2 sentences here, which was the opening of his speech. He said, "I want to start with a quote." This was the quote. He goes, "Naturally, the common people don't want war. But after all, it is the leaders of a country who determine the policy, and it's always a simple matter to drag people along, whether it is a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. This is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in every country." And then the politician said, "These are the words of Hermann Goering, Hitler's Reichsmarshal at the Nuremberg trials," right? Because that's exactly how the Nazis came to power when they burnt the Reichstag down. "Oh, we're under attack. You've got to give us powers." Now, that politician, I had to get in a time machine and go find him, because that speech was not given today in Parliament when it should have been. It was given in 2003 in Parliament, and the speaker was one Anthony Albanese, the member for Grayndler, who gave the most fiery, emphatic speech against the original ASIO powers in 2003. But 23 years later, that man has just made these powers permanent and expanded them so they don't just have to apply to this life or death scenario of a mass casualty attack. It can apply to everything ASIO does: foreign interference, espionage, border security, everything. It's all justified. We are now a police state. And if they got these powers, are you telling me they're not going to use them? Right? They had the power, as I said, they got the power to recommend banning organisations on top of that. Plus, they got the power to jail journalists for 10 years for reporting on an ASIO operation. And it was really chilling this week when Four Corners did an important story on the Bondi shooting and the intelligence failure. ASIO publicly threatened Four Corners before that was aired. The journalists at Four Corners. And I thought that was completely unacceptable in a democracy, because when it's ASIO making the threat, right? This is an agency that has real power to act on that threat. That's what happened this week. So if that's already what's happening, well, all I can say to the people who are listening, because I don't want to be alarmist, but I can say this. The Citizens Party learnt years ago, you fight in the open. You don't fight in the shadows. You got to fight in the open, because the only solution here is maximum transparency, right? That's why we're waging a fight like this. We will continue waging the fight. It's the only possible protection against them being used, that you make sure that they'll never be used secretly, quietly, right? And then if you bring the population along on that fight, eventually the population will prevail, because we are many, they are few.
It's we need to discuss this again very shortly. We've run out of time, but it is absolutely terrifying. But we are in lockstep with the entire world. And I was watching a clip from Thomas Massey and Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
And if you had any faith in Donald Trump and his fight for freedom and all that sort of stuff. You just need to look at that clip. It's on our X. There's just a post there, and Jen's reposted it, and it will show you. It shows you that she could not answer the questions. All she could do is throw and hurl insults at Thomas Massey, and all he wanted to know was a couple of things, and she kept saying, "You're a nutter and a failed politician," and stuff like that.
But Mike, the Dow's at 50,000.
Yeah. I'm looking actually getting a rowboat and heading. I used to say this to a guy years ago. Come out to Australia. Now I'm going to borrow that rowboat and head off to New Guinea or somewhere. Unless all you have to worry about is cannibals. Just don't get. If they invite you for dinner, don't go. Robbie Barwick, if somebody wants to find out more about you, and by the way, we have to do this real soon because I think most Australians, not their fault by the way, have gone to sleep or not noticing this. It's media and independent media too that are not telling people how it is, what it is, what's going to happen to them because, oh yeah, sun's shining, having a barbecue, not for barbecue galore because they're shut now, but other barbecue shops, and they forget that very, very shortly you'll be living in a version worse than probably China. Robbie, somebody wants to find out more about what you do. How do they do that?
You keep provoking me, Mike. I've just come back from China. I can tell you the daily lives of Chinese people are much more free than Australia. I've been there. We're going to become like America, mate. That's what you should be worried about. Anyway,
or England or the UK.
Or England. It's very important that people do go to our website right now. www.citizens.citizensparty.org.au. There's a petition there you can sign against this ASIO bill. It passed today in the House. Parliament, the Senate's not sitting until the 1st of March, though, so it can't pass Parliament fully until the Senate passes it. So we have a few weeks to really hammer senators get them to vote against this bill, and all the details will be there. So look for the petition, and you'll get all these. Sign the petition, you'll get all these instructions on how you can make phone calls, send emails, etc. This is just getting started.
Robbie, you're fantastic. Thank you very much. Robbie Barwick here on the World Today. Coming up next, the Protagonist.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said flags will fly at half-mast nationwide for 7 days after a February 10th mass shooting at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School in northeastern British Columbia. Royal Canadian Mounted Police said 7 victims and the suspect died at the school, and 2 more bodies were found at a linked residence, bringing the total dead to 10. Police have not released the shooter's identity or motive. Carney said he spoke with the BC Premier and the Public Safety Minister, who is coordinating the federal response, and both will visit the community. A Russian Garand-2 drone struck a home in the Kharkiv region, killing a 34-year-old father and his 3 young children, and seriously injuring their 35 weeks pregnant mother. The house was destroyed and burned, trapping the family under rubble. The mayor announced 3 days of mourning. The United Nations reports 2,514 civilians were killed and 12,142 injured in 2025, a 31% rise from 2024. President Zelensky called for stronger pressures on Russia and more air defenses. Military aid to Ukraine fell 13% last year, though European support rose 67%, according to the Kiel Institute. The UK Ministry of Defence said February 11th it will double British troops deployed to northern Norway from 1,000 to 2,000 over the next 3 years to help secure the Arctic, citing rising threats from Russia. Defense Secretary John Healey is set to confirm the increase during a February 11th visit to Camp Viking and said the UK will scale up joint exercises with NATO allies. Planned drills include the Joint Expeditionary Force exercise Lion Protector across the Danish Straits, Iceland, and Norway to protect critical infrastructure, and NATO's cold response, with 1,500 Royal Marines deploying in March. Afghan asylum seeker Ahmad Mulakil, who arrived in the UK by small boat 4 months earlier, was convicted at Warwick Crown Court of raping a 12-year-old girl, abducting her, 2 counts of sexual assault, and taking an indecent video. The July 22, 2025 attack occurred after he met the victim in an uneaten play park and took her to a secluded residential road where he threatened her family and filmed the abuse while laughing. He was cleared of a second rape count. Police identified him via his government-issued debit card used post-attack and recovered DNA evidence. He cried upon the verdict, remains in custody awaiting sentencing, and faces deportation. The case sparked local protests and debate over housing recent migrants amid criticism of initial police transparency on his background. Counterterrorism police are leading the investigation into a stabbing at Kingsbury High School in Brent, northwest London, on Tuesday due to surrounding circumstances, though it has not been declared a terrorist incident. A 13-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after two boys, aged 12 and 13, were stabbed and seriously injured. They're now stable in hospital. Others were reportedly sprayed with the substance. Witnesses claim the attacker shouted Allahu Akbar. The police have neither confirmed nor denied this, keeping an open mind on motive. One victim bravely pulled the fire alarm to raise help. Pupils were held for hours to speak with officers, causing distress. The suspect may have climbed a wall to enter the school. Keir Starmer faced harsh criticism at PMQs.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to take no lectures from the Tories in standards in public life. She defended Partygate for months and months and months. And even now she says it was overblown. The Shadow Foreign Secretary broke the ministerial code by bullying. Boris Johnson kept her. The leader of the opposition promoted her. She sits on her front bench. Her former Shadow Justice Secretary complained about not seeing enough white faces in Birmingham, and she was too weak to sack him for racism.
We'll be back with another news break at the top of the next hour. This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Right now, somewhere in Nigeria, there's a Christian family being persecuted. Those who are not killed are often forced to flee their homes. At Equipping the Persecuted, they're committed to reaching every affected area and help heal the deep physical and emotional wounds that have been inflicted upon them. But they can't help them without your support. So please visit equippingthepersecuted.org and donate today. Sign up for just $35 a month. It's a little over $1 a day, and you'll help rescue Christians who are suffering and provide security, medical care, food, shelter, and love. The situation is urgent, so I'm asking you to join in the next 10 minutes. It's a life of fear and danger for these Christians, but for just over $1 a day, you can change everything. Go online to equippingthepersecuted.org and make a difference in the life of a persecuted Christian. That's www.equippingthepersecuted.org.
Hi, my name's Michelle Tankey and I'm the volunteer manager at the Lost Dogs Home. We've got 145 incredible volunteers that help us with a wide range of activities, including helping out in the laundry, taking dogs for a walk, doing activities with our enrichment program, administration, gardening, you name it, they're helping us around the shelter. Whether it's blowing bubbles to entertain kittens waiting for adoptions or even taking a dog for a walk, it's such an incredible positive impact on the animals. Volunteers are so important and special to this shelter because they support us in caring for thousands of animals each year. The impact they have enables us to do far more for the animals than we would be able to. For example, we can get on top of the huge amount of laundry we have. So the volunteers allow us to clean thousands more blankets than we could. It's incredible the amount of gifts that we're given by the public. We're so grateful for it. So if we get some toys, we can give them directly to puppies straight away to play with. Or towels, we can take them to our vet hospital for them to use immediately. So it's a really important job to help staff with. I would say to someone who's interested in volunteering to please get in touch. We would love to hear from you. We have an application form on our website that you can fill in, so please just detail all your skills and experience you can offer the shelter, and we'll be in touch when a suitable role comes up.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome back to The World Today. And the protagonist, a former head of the UK drugs regulator that approves vaccines and medicines, has been banned from working as a doctor after failing to reveal his convictions for child sex offences. Dr. Ian Hudson trained as a paediatrician and worked in the pharmaceutical industry before going on to serve as Chief Executive of the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, for 6 years. Hudson was convicted at Chelmsford Magistrates Court in 2024 of 2 counts of attempting to engage in sexual communication with a child. Following his departure from the MHRA, he was awarded an OBE in the 2020 New Year's Honours. Hudson then worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation until 2024. Interesting, isn't it? Our panel today will give us valuable insights into the really lucrative pharmaceutical industry, into the individuals who have made it to the top, to the regulatory agencies funded by taxpayers to protect them from risky drugs. Remember that term, safe and effective? And which all failed so spectacularly during the most critical time of COVID. This ecosystem of big pharma, government, regulators, bodies and NGOs remain immune from accountability. But just how corrupt is it? And is reform even possible? Our panel today is Andrea Clarick. He's a media host and a medical freedom advocate, and Hedley Rees, MD at PharmaFlow, and one of our regulars. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Now, I hope I got your name right. Andrea? Is that our Andrea? Sorry.
Andrea, no problem. You can call me Andrew. Thank you for the invitation, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you so much. What's your views on this? How corrupt is the industry?
Well, it's a hard question to answer because there's so many billions of dollars involved. I had lots of interviews following pandemic last 4 years, and I had the luck to really connect some dots even before everything came out with these Epstein files. For example, I had the interview with Heiko Schinning. He's a doctor from Germany, and he wrote a few books. And inside these books, he explained direct connection, interest connection between Lex Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein. And their companies, because they established few medical companies, and they are closely, of course, connected to other of their friends like Bill Gates. And that was happening already 10 to 15 years ago. And now we see from these Epstein files, they knew that something big will happen, and they were building infrastructure to earn huge amount of money. And when we see now who else is involved, especially from these medical agencies, now we have enough reason, more than enough reason, to doubt that they planned everything, they earn huge amount of money, while whole world, especially small and business entrepreneurs and ordinary people, suffer hard, lost lots of money. There happened a huge transfer of wealth during this pandemic. I think, according to the book, The Real Anthony Fauci from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that was transferred around $3.8 trillion from poorer part of the world to the richest part. And when we saw all these numbers, we cannot conclude how much they earn, but for sure they had huge financial interest.
Hedley, what's your thoughts? We probably need to turn the microphone on. That's that little that button says "Turn me on."
Yeah. So what can I say? By golly, this has gone from the sublime to the ridiculous, isn't it? Well, I go back to Tony Blair and the UK government in 2021, which is roughly the time that Andre was talking about. And before that, Bill Gates entered the industry in the late 1990s, and he left the world of computer viruses to join the world of human viruses, and make a similar amount of money that he made out of computers. And Tony Blair set up the Ministerial Industry Strategy Group in the UK. The chair was the CEO of AstraZeneca, strangely enough, and the other other executive from pharma on there was Sir Richard Sykes, who subsequently became the chair of the Vaccine Task Force in the UK, a man who's got a very dodgy record in the industry and, has been sailing close to the wind for a very long time. So what I'm saying here is the point I try to get over when I talk about this is that the epicenter of all this is the UK, because it had once we left, it had two major pharma companies, AstraZeneca and GSK, based in the UK, neither of which were performing particularly well. I mean, in maybe 20 years ago, Glaxo, which was the forerunner to GlaxoSmithKline, was the largest pharmaceutical company in the world. After two major acquisitions costing about $20 billion, it's not even in the top 10 now. So, the UK pharma has been struggling for a long time. UK government have been saying, well, you were going to get us up the greasy pole in life sciences and pharma, but what's happening? And on this committee, we had the MHRA, we had Dr. Ian Hudson, funnily enough. We had Ian McCubbin, who's now the chair of the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult, who was the VP of Supply Chain for GSK for many years, who I met in 2012, who basically said, your work is okay for young people, but nothing new here. Okay, well, I took that on the chin. But what I'm saying is, undercover, Hudson, Gates, all these people have captured the global regulatory authorities over the course of, it began in 2012 when the WHO set up this duplicate regulatory authority, and Hudson was the first one to chair it. And the thing that's really gobsmacked me now is that the guy's been convicted, Ian Hudson, as a sex offender. I mean, where was MHRA's due diligence? I'm not saying he was doing that then, I don't know. But someone who has demonstrated that sort of behavior, surely the MHRA should have had processes in place where they delved a bit deeper into his background, particularly since he worked for the pharmaceutical industry. He worked for SmithKline Beecham, which became part of GSK. That's why I say you could not make this up. And I'm glad Andrew's on the call, because he's a very honest man who's been fighting this a long time. None of us have got the resources that Big Pharma have, but we've got to just keep speaking out and yeah.
Andrew or Andrea, I just because we talk about Big Pharma, this is just an observation here. Maybe they should be referred to now as Pig Pharma, because they are truly in the swill, aren't they? They're just terrible. It's just disgusting. But if you look at what's happening in the UK, I mean, you have Mandelson, you have ex-Prince Andrew, then you have Ian Hudson. Okay, the due diligence wasn't there. It obviously is not there, and it's jobs for the boys. But where is the decency and the honesty that should come with people holding positions of trust and power? Well, you probably need to turn your microphone on. That one.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'm waiting that somebody went to jail. We are talking, whole world is talking about these disgusting males and this connection with the most powerful and the most influential people in the world, and still accept Jeffrey Epstein if he's in the jail, exactly if he's dead. Nobody went to jail. How is this possible? When you have these doubts that there was a children involved, small children, there was a sex trafficking that is most highest, except maybe genocide, it's a crime around the world, and still the same people are in the power and nobody still in the jail. Let's remember just maybe a few weeks ago, some of them were sitting with President Trump in his office, and they were talking about big investments around the world, investments in all kind of businesses, especially in the United States. And they should be in jail, according to me. But that's talking about people, about politics, about influence. There is no ethics. There is no anymore any kind of moral in this. Just interest and money, and who is powerful can do whatever he wants. I'm here also exchanging emails with Croatian agencies, with the people who are here involved and who are powerful. And I can experience that I have enough reason to have doubts that high regulations are led by ethical and moral standards. It seems to that it's also here led by profit and money interest. And when you have health as a topic, then you need to have more ethic and moral than profit, because it's a matter of health, it's a matter of our children, not a matter of business, as of course is it seems to in a whole around the world, not only United Kingdom, and it's also in United States primarily. I have to say, I was listening chief of Moderna just a few weeks ago, and he said in Davos, he said, well, we will not invest anymore in vaccine because according to this administration, we will lost United States market. And that's why we cannot anymore make return on profit for the vaccines. That means he thinks that return of profit and profit of their shareholders is more important than health. And that's why they will not invest anymore in vaccines development. We need to see that these people who are running the show have the least interest of our own health. They have only interest in their shareholders, their pocket. And if this doesn't change, in the future, we will have huge problem with, we can say, trust in our institutions, because we have more now reasons to doubt than to trust them.
Hedley, let's look at Ian Hudson just for a tick. How influential was he at the European Medicines Agency?
Oh, hugely influential. We need to remember that the European Medicines Agency was in Canary Wharf for up until Brexit. So effectively, Ian Hudson set up the European Medicines Agency while he was at MHRA. It was based in Victoria initially, the MHRA. Then when the European Medicines Agency opened in Canary Wharf, then they moved to there, and Hudson basically was set up the European Medicines Agency, and he was the deputy chair of what they call the CMPH or something. This is the committee that decides ultimately on whether drugs are approved or not. So Hudson would have been, when he was with Bill Gates from 2019 onwards, he will have been pulling the strings of European Medicines Agency and the MHRA. So, he's doing that. And every approval came through the MHRA first, which Hudson would have made sure. And then it went in lockstep, European Medicines Agency, FDA, when Peter Marks was there, another bad apple or bad egg, maybe. Um, so what we've what we've seen is gross malfeasance, call it what you will. And it's not just Ian Hudson. If I can just say, Mike, that Alison Wright was going to be on this call, and she's had computer problems. And like a lot of us, we don't have a lot of resources, so we're trying to get the word out. But anyway, she writes a Substack, and I've been working with her. She's identified something called the British Farmer Group, which is on Companies House. Now, Alison is an expert in Companies House dealings and dual identities. Like, she's identified the chair of GSK of having 11 different identities. But in this British Farmer Group, which is basically run by AstraZeneca and GSK, you've got all the players in this. You've got Whitty, you've got Valence, you've got Sir Bruce Keogh. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but he was the #1 in the NHS. Oh, and that's how the NHS is so heavily invested in part of this, because the people at the top have been pushing it. And I will share more on the British Farmer Group with Alison as time goes by. But the other thing I should mention and I'll call you Andrew because it's easier. Andrew asked me about the approval of Gardasil 9 in Croatia, and with a bit of help with that, and we've worked together for quite a while with interviews and the whole thing. And what's pretty clear is that people don't realize that the ultimate responsibility for the safety of drugs lay with the companies selling them. The yellow card system, the VAERS system in the US, that's just a backup system. There are very strict legal obligations on AstraZeneca, on all these companies, to collect and report adverse events, serious adverse events data, and they have to respond within a certain amount of time. So I'm hoping to help Andrew with that, so that he can write a letter to Halmed, which is the Croatian regulator, and ask the question, why aren't you looking after Croatian people and relying on the European Medicines Agency approval that is not properly scrutinized? The safety signals are not properly being collected. And, I think this is what's needed to challenge the regulators to stand by their own regulations. I'm not going to ask if that helps, Mike, because the last time I said that, you said no. So,
look, you can say what you like, Hedley. Don't ever say that I've censored you. No, sorry. Andrew, can you just tell me your thoughts on the because he was very close with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and then we have Bill Gates's connection with Epstein, and then he's mixing with particular of the lady folk from various parts of Eastern Europe, such as maybe in Moscow. Headlines: the Russians did it. I'm not too sure whether they're referring to what he contracted or something else. I have no idea. But the Russians did do it when it came to Bill Gates. But tell me your views on Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, because I didn't know anything about this. But they would be looking very much like a grubby organisation, wouldn't they, with a lot of power?
Well, I can tell you one example. In Croatia, there was one scientist who was very powerful in the beginning of pandemic. Well, there is one interesting thing. I know him personally from before, and he can thank for his success. He is working in Edinburgh, and his name is Igor Rudan. And he thanks many times for his success, Bill and Melinda Gates, because they support him, give him huge and financial support during his career. And suddenly, in the start of pandemic, he said that this virus is nothing serious, that we need to treat this illness and nothing special will happen. But after just few weeks after he get back from Edinburgh again in Croatia, he changed his mind and he was one who was promoting all kind of lockdowns. Exactly one of these lockdowns, we call it suko in Croatia. That means immediately go everybody in the house. And he had a huge influence in the start on our government. And there is some tapes that showing that he had a meeting with our government and he was promoting all these measures. And now I want to ask you openly, and I will ask him, of course, and I did, because I know him personally. How come that you change your mind? Is there any influence of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and his money for you to change your mind and to force and promote all kind of measures in Croatia? The same measure that we know today that is completely wrong. And I have to say that these measures, lockdowns, masks, and finally, of course, these vaccines made a huge generational damage for everybody. In Europe, Europe took they built up a new generation EU fund. It's around 1,000, that means 1 trillion euros of loans that European had to repay until 2058. That means next generation, and that's what is the name of this fund, will have to repay this money. We took this loan to reparation from COVID, but not from COVID really, from COVID measures, because COVID measures were political decision. We know now there was no science behind. We know now there was no any proof, any science-based evidence that these lockdowns and all measures will help anyhow against this pandemic. We know this now. We have enough investigation. But now I need to ask, what was this money was used for to rebuild economy after pandemic? Not only for Croatia, for whole Europe. Next generation will have to pay this money, repay back with the interest. And also that brought us inflation, huge inflation. In 18 months after decision, they made this decision in 2020, July, to take this, to make this loan. And this loan is, it's guaranteed by all countries. That means whoever not repay, everybody have to pay in the future. That's a huge risk. That was first time in European Union history that we are taking this syndicate loan, but that everybody has to be a guarantee, and they spend this money. We now see inflation. We now see that Europe is in huge problems because of huge amount of loans, not only for this purpose. There was after that war in Ukraine. And now we take loan for Ukraine. That means these politicians bringing whole Europe in financial crisis because of wrong political decisions. Let me say again, everything was behind politicians, everything, not science at all. We know the papers. I had a few interviews about this Robert Koch papers from Germany, where this explicitly says inside this paper that scientists said something differently than it was decided by the politicians. Investigation in Croatia was not. Still, they are refusing because the same government, what was during pandemic, is still in the power. They are refusing investigation. But for example, in Slovakia, there was investigation, and they conclude everything what I said now, that all these things during pandemic was completely wrong, and that was political decisions. That means we still didn't clear this wrong doing during pandemic. Still, nobody who was involved was taking responsibility. There is some changes in the United States. We'll see it will come here, because in the United States still we don't see completely investigation. I think for that reason is because President Trump is still bragging that warp speed was the best thing what he done. I'm not sure really about this. I think it was the worst thing that he done during his presidency. But it seems to that is the reason why they don't do it, this investigation deeply. But it seems to that this Epstein files open completely new view on the whole industry, especially last 20 years. And it seems to that we need to investigate whole world agency, especially in Europe, European Medical Agency, what was their role inside, and why still nobody is taking responsibility for this wrongdoing.
Yeah, I look at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We look at Ian Hudson, very cozy, and like what we are seeing now, the disassembling of the pretend moralistic government, and there's so many up top. If you look at, you can't go much higher in the UK than the monarchy, and Prince Andrew, Prince Grub. But I'm just thinking, though, with his connections with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, whether the UK and the EU regulatory processes have been, corrupted by Ian Hudson. What do you think, Hedley?
Oh, absolutely, yes. In the UK and Europe, this is different to the US, and this is a crucial point. They had what they call a conditional marketing authorization. Now, unheard of before. Normally, when you want to market a drug, you have to go through all the non-clinical tests and then the clinical testing, and then the regulators go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, especially the supply chain, and they either approve it or reject it. And if they approve it, you get a marketing authorization. So in Europe, they had to find a way of putting conditions to explain why they gave approval without going through the full marketing authorization process. And those conditions were explicit, and they were published. And one of it was they had to manufacture to good distribution practice and good manufacturing practice. And they didn't. They just didn't. And again, those were on the internet, those conditions. I've got copies of the conditions. I've got links on the government website. And just to say about Melinda Gates, see, as you mentioned it, I mean, she wrote a paper in collaboration with, wait for it, Sir Patrick Vallance, who is now in charge of everything in the UK. He's a lord. He is also the person I would have to write to, or someone else would have to write to complain about the MHRA, because I've done it direct to the MHRA and I've had no response. So there would be an option to escalate that to the highest person, which is Patrick Vallance, and I don't think he's going to uphold that sort of complaint. But Melinda Gates and he wrote a paper called the 100 Days Development or something. So this was developing vaccines in 100 days. Now, aside from the fact that's absolutely impossible, and I should say that Donald Trump, Andreas mentioned it, was advised by a GSK board member on Operation Warp Speed, Monsif Slaoui. So he was conned. Absolutely conned. Slaoui was also on the Lonza board, who made the Moderna vaccines. He was on the Moderna board. So, that was the height of corruption. How they got, someone like him in there to be able to advise on warp speed, I don't know. But I know I'm jumping around a bit. But wherever you look, there's corruption and there's underhand dealings. And in some way, we have to expose it. And my concern is that they talk about Gates going to the Netherlands for trial, but the people bringing evidence are people like Sasha Latyapova, who is based in the US, so she doesn't understand any of the regulatory processes, and she retired as a millionaire in 2012 from providing services to Pfizer and all these other big pharma companies. So if that Bill Gates case goes ahead and it fails, does that mean that he can't be tried again for these crimes that have been committed? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but we're still not over the hill, if you like, in proper holding these people properly to account.
Maybe I can add something
Yes,
if it's
please, please.
possible. Yes. Well, I had an interview with a ex-member of British Parliament, Andrew Bridgen, and he told me one interesting experience in 2011 when was first elected. They had he was a member of Conservative Party, and they had one meeting when everybody was elected, and then at that time Prime Minister Cameron came and said, I have one special man who will help us a lot in this thing, and that was Bill Gates. That means his deep involvement in governments is a long time, and when we see this, that newly elected prime minister says that he's the special guy, and we know everybody that he's rich, the richest man in the world, and he cannot be nothing except a conflict of interest, and that is something that what we see for years everywhere. As I said, this example in Croatia, and well, nobody investigating officially. And there is additional thing what Hadley mentioned. There is this case in Netherlands, and I had interview with Jamila Lapere. She's a journalist who is following this, and this case is not started even yet. The lawyer who is running this case is now accused, and we know that Rainer Fulmich, one who was investigating all these connections, is still in the jail. They are now convicting him for some kind of money fraud, but we see that is a political influence. Well, this is huge. This is worldwide. And if these people have so many power, then what do we need our governments for?
Tell me this, Andrew or Andrea. Tell me, how do we get around this? Because what you're saying is absolutely correct. It's also terrifying because government become the tyrant, and we become very insignificant. How do we get around it? How do we fight it?
I don't see a way out in these conditions because I think a political elite is so huge, deep involved in this commercial interest. We have a huge example in Davos. I just had the interview with Mark Morano, who was present in last meeting of WEF in Davos just 1 month ago. And he explained everything. It will go next Sunday. What was happening there? And simplest way, this meeting is suitable for official and legal corruption, because whatever rules are running around and running officially in Davos, it's completely different, because all these politicians and big companies and big influence and the wealthiest people in the world coming together, discuss about finding interest, and also discuss about funding political parties. And he said that about funding political, because you can agree how to fund political party without breaking laws if you do it in Davos. And that's what is it for. We see, and I was asking how our Croatian prime minister can went there and not have any report what was he doing there, with whom he was talking to, and about what, and in which name. And these questions were never asked and answered in Croatian parliament. That's what's telling me that Croatian parliament and European parliament is not in charge. Corporations and big companies and exactly influence people are in charge in our democracy. And that's why I don't see on the present circumstances how to get out of this.
Hedley, how do we get out of it? I mean, we're just getting off the topic here a bit, but you know, and I know, and so does Andrew know. And by the way, Mark Morano used to work with TNT with us for years and years. And once we get back, which we're keeping our fingers crossed, he'll also come back with us too, because Mark Morano is just very, very good. But Hedley, how do we get around? How do we get around the ugly elite? Because it's not government. It's almost going back to it's say in the UK, where you had your kings, and they would throw, they'd have the serfs, and every now and then the king would decide to ride through it and take whatever he wanted. Not a whole lot has changed with the UK at the moment, except instead of the king being visible, or the person in charge of that particular village being visible, what we have is these slippery, slimy grubs that are these cockroaches, as I once used on air, these cockroaches. They're running the whole kit and caboodle. And as you mentioned, if you want to go and make a complaint, good luck on that one, because you are actually going, it's like saying to a cannibal, who do I go to complain about everybody eating meat? It's not going to work. So what do we do?
Well, there is huge light at the end of the tunnel, absolutely, because what most people don't know is that big pharma's on the edge of failure in a huge way. These gene therapies were the last chance saloon for them, and they don't work. Not only don't work, but they're dangerous. They've got a huge FDA black box warning on them, and they cost $400,000 minimum for one treatment. They got anything else. Everything else has gone generic, is out of patent. So what could they do? Well, luckily I'm back on LinkedIn now, and as I mentioned last time, a friend of mine calls LinkedIn Facebook for business. But you can see a lot of what's going on, and the investment community is really panicking because these blockbuster revenues are not coming through anymore. These drugs are not getting approved. And I just saw this morning, someone posted to say that Vinay Prasad, who was head of the Center for Biologic Evaluation and Research, who was taken over from Peter Marks, thank heavens for that, he stopped the Moderna flu vaccine in its tracks himself. He overruled his staff and said, no, that drug is not going to be safe and it's not going to be developed. And there's been uproar. Staff has written a big article about how bad it's not fair on investors, they're not giving them certainty. So I posted a Fierce Farmer article from, I don't know, a few years back, where Peter Marks, who is Vinay Prasad's predecessor, had overruled his staff to say, oh, these gene therapies are safe. We need to take a broader look at the potential for them. And they don't realize that it's end of the road for Big Pharma. I've said before, Mike, that these vaccines were the existing gene therapies. Novartis Kymriah, which is a gene-modified cell therapy, not selling, FDA black box warning. They ain't got anything else. So where are they going to go? At the moment, there's a new feed-in frenzy. They're just trying to keep this investors happy. They're saying, oh, we're going to get this to market or that to market. There's nothing coming to market.
That's very interesting indeed.
So we're going to go through about 6 or 12 months where realization hits inside the industry, and we're going to start to see the wheels coming off for Big Pharma and the people who thought it was going to be their route to riches, the Gates and all these people.
Andrea, here's a question. Hedley has just said that Big Pharma, basically, they've got nothing. So if Big Pharma go, then who replaces them? Because we still need pharmaceutical industry. We'd still need that industry. We just need a much better, much more honest and upfront and doing the right things sort of industry. So if Big Pharma go, is there someone in, or is there another group or another industry? And Hedley, you can jump in too if you wish. Is there another industry that will put their hand up and sort of take us back to where we need to go back to, and that's to honesty, integrity, and safe medicines?
Well, that's a hypothetical question, and I don't think it will happen. But we can say next thing. For sure, these people who producing and who are honest in this pharma industry, they have knowledge. They know how to produce this medicine. There is experts who are honest inside. Why don't they take over these businesses, became entrepreneurs and start to produce the same thing but on the ethical way? That means honestly doing these clinical trials, have on his first interest health of people, and of course this business will bring much less profit. But in this situation, it's ethics and moral. It's more important than profit, and there are people who knows how to do it. I don't think that corporation are solutions. I think, especially in this Western hemisphere, that means Europe and United States, Canada, this capitalism is not anymore capitalism; is corporatism, and that's the worst way to doing business. Corporatism is very similar like communism because you have huge companies connected, fascism exactly, huge companies connected to governments, and they are running all businesses. And this is something what is danger for whole Western economy. And if we lose these corporations, I think we will not lose much. We will have a new opportunity to build up new way of producing, doing business, ethics, moral in business, especially in producing medicine, because this is the most important thing. As I said already, health should be on the first interest of these companies, and this I see opportunity. But I don't think it will happen because they are still too strong and they accumulated capital from for decades, and they use all this capital to fight to keep their interest, and that's why we are still here where we are now, with a huge influence from a side of them. In, as I said already, in Davos, what happened. That's why I'm not optimistic.
Hedley, who replaces them if what you say is going to happen, that they got nothing? When they go, who fills the void?
They have been replaced. I mean, over 90% of drugs are out of patent. So we've got, most of them are made in India and Asia. The generics companies like Ranbaxy, Wockhardt, you could list them. They work to very slim margins, and their supply chains aren't exactly squeaky clean. But most of the drugs are made by these companies, and the strange thing is, these companies are using contractors to make the drugs. Companies like Catalent and Lonza and Allmark and all these different companies who offer fee-for-service manufacturing and drug distribution capabilities. But I won't go into it, but effectively, the supply chain is like a spaghetti these days, and the shortages that we're seeing across the UK and all over the world is because, we've got the most complex and convoluted supply chains the world has ever known. So there's that. So the world is surviving for medicines because we've got companies who make generics to small margins. They're not looking for the the sort of blockbuster profits that big pharma are looking for. They can live on the profits that they do make. But the other thing I should say is that I call it taking medicine back to the future. But it wasn't like this in there's not many advantages to being old, but one of them is you sort of got some history to work on. And when I joined this industry in 1979, working in Wales for a US company, everything was integrated, joined up. You could, we'd take raw materials in the back door and we'd ship to hospitals, pharmacies, and we did everything. We had one quality system that did the whole thing. Then, I won't go into the detail, but there was an event in the mid-1980s where the industry thought, oh, if you've got a patent, a molecular patent, and sales and marketing, we're going to make a lot of money. And the whole industry went from patenting processes to manufacture a drug to patenting molecular compounds when they didn't know if it was ever going to get to market, and 95% of them don't get to market. So what we're seeing now is the result of 4 decades of patent law that's being gained by the industry. And of course, you can only play games for so long. If it's a game that's never going to make sense, then it has to come to a halt. This is what I've written in my second book for Wiley, and I'm so glad they asked me to write that, is that we've got to change the law of patents or patents in the I've been told to say in the if it's a US audience, because the industry have identified this thing called compound claims, which means you can claim a molecule of your own just if you say, I think it's going to cure Alzheimer's, even if you've got no idea if it's going to do it or not. So the patent is awarded when it's a molecule, and then the clock is ticking because they've only got 20 years to exploit that patent period. If it takes 10 years to develop the drug, and they've only got 10 years left to exploit, but basically it's taken about 15 years to develop a drug. So they've got this more haste, less speed, and its official figures, US Government Accountability Office 2026, that for every 250 drugs that enter development, only one gets to market. So when they say it costs $2.6 billion to develop a drug, at least $2 billion of that, more than that, is failure, is all the failed studies that never got, or failed project that never got to market. And that is coming out now. And I'm hoping my book will help push it further forward.
Yeah, it's we're just about to run out of time. Got about 90 seconds left. So I'll just ask Andrea, first of all, in about a minute or less, tell us where you think we'll be at this time next year, because I look into people say look into a cup of tea and you can see the future. What I see is this pig swill. Looks a bit like porridge, but black. It's not looking great. Where do you see us being, Andrea?
Well, I'm covering all other topics also behind pharmacy, and because of it, I will be very happy if in the same day next year we will not be in a huge war, because things are complicating concerning the safety in Europe and all around the world. And I don't think that people who also have a huge influence, like this weapon industry, huge industrial weapon complex, they have also huge influence in this. I had also interviews about it, and I showed these connections. And I will be very happy if we will not be in a huge world war.
And Hedley, you got 30 seconds. We're going right over too, by the way, but we do that. Where do you think we'll be at?
I think we see Ryan Fulmish come out of jail, and so important because, he's interviewed me a number of times as he's a fabulous bloke, and what happened when he went to Mexico and now he got, kidnapped and back to Germany is horrible. But when he comes out, I think we see a lot of legal pressure come into this. And I just think the world has woken up, and what Andrea Andrew said there, is very important. And, the more voices that keep saying this, the better.
Yep, I totally agree with you. Hedley, just before we go, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
Well, I just put my Substack inside Farmer on mothballs, because it's been going 5 years now, and I keep saying the same thing. I keep sharing the evidence. The same evidence is there. There's 5 years worth of evidence. If any lawyers listening to this and they want to sue anyone in Big Pharma over COVID and all things, I've got all the evidence, and they can have it for free. So the reward would be to see Gates and the rest of these buggers go to. Oh, sorry, I swore then. Rest of these people go to jail, and I think we will start to see these people going to jail. The likes, I don't know about Tony Blair, but this whole globalist thing is. I think the wheels are coming off. You guys know more than me about the globalist piece. I know the sort of farmer piece, but so that's my bit.
And Andrea, or as you said, Andrew, somebody wants to find out more about what you do, how do they do that?
I'm very active on social media, especially Facebook and X. They can find me under my name there. I have my web page according to my podcast, that's Slobodny Podcast, SLOBODNA podcast, .hr, that's Croatian. And also I have channel in YouTube. I have in Rumble channel. And usually I have on Z1 TV every Sunday at 2 p.m. Central European Time, my show. And you can look on the internet, you can find there. That means every Sunday, 2 p.m. Central European Time is my show, and you can find me there.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on to Andrea. Andrea Cleric and Hedley Rees, our protagonist today. This is The Protagonist, and this is The World Today.
Thank you.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Members of Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet publicly rallied behind him after his chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, resigned over the decision to appoint Lord Peter Mandelson as ambassador to Washington despite his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Senior figures including Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband, David Lammy, Rachel Reeves, and others pledged support, urging party unity. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sawar called for Starmer to resign. Though the backing has bought Starmer time, he remains unpopular over border and economic issues. Poor polling may deter a leadership challenge that could trigger an early election favoring Nigel Farage's Reform UK. A February 5th Capitol Military Political Symposium in Beijing drew attention because no full generals appeared in state media footage, only 7 lieutenant generals and 13 major generals, fueling analysis that China's senior military purges may have hollowed out PLA leadership. Past attendees, including Miao Hua and He Hung-jun, were later purged, and other officers have disappeared from view. Analysts cited the politics of public appearances, noting smaller senior officer entourages around Xi Jinping and changes in event format that may obscure personnel signals. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban accuses Brussels and Kiev of declaring war on Hungary, amid reports the EU plans to offer Ukraine a form of limited or membership light status by 2027, despite opposition from some member states. Politico reported that EU officials are considering relaxing admission criteria and that Orban is viewed as the main obstacle, with suggestions his removal could be sought through elections or suspension of Hungary's voting rights. Orban urged supporters to mobilize for April's parliamentary election. Ukraine seeks EU accession as part of a U.S.-mediated peace deal, though it has publicly rejected second-tier membership. Russian authorities confirmed taking action against Telegram, accusing it of failing to comply with national laws after users reported widespread service disruptions. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Roskomnadzor began restricting the app because companies must follow Russian legislation. A Moscow court fined Telegram 10.8 million rubles for failing to remove banned content. Telegram founder Pavel Durov criticized the restrictions, saying the platform supports free speech and privacy. Russian officials have accused Telegram and WhatsApp of refusing lawful data requests while complying with foreign intelligence services and have promoted the domestic Max Messenger as a secure alternative. Nigel Farage announced that Reform UK is preparing for a potential early general election, citing the crisis facing Prime Minister Keir Starmer over the Mandelson-Epstein scandal. Speaking in Birmingham, Farage said he would soon unveil a shadow cabinet, including several recent Conservative defectors, and begin recruiting parliamentary candidates. He suggested the government's troubles could accelerate an election previously expected by 2027. Farage said the campaign would focus on immigration, economic decline, energy policy, national sovereignty, and opposition to net zero policies, arguing that both Labour and the Conservatives have failed Britain and the reform would act in the national interest. Keir Starmer faced harsh criticism at PMQs.
I'll tell you what other action we've taken, Mr. Speaker. Along with the safeguarding minister, I and this government have introduced the most far-reaching violence against women and girls strategy. And I'll tell you what else we've done. This government has introduced a pay rise for millions of working-class women. What did the Leader of the Opposition do? She opposed it. This government's introducing greater protection for women at work. What did the Leader of the Opposition do? She opposed it. And I'll tell you what else she opposes. This government removing the disgusting rape clause that they put in place.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
It's early evening in Lochgelly, and as many as 100 young people gathered in the park. Some of the local residents see the young people as a problem, and while many people simply avoid the park on Friday evening, the Salvation Army has been taking a different approach.
Some young people are out on the street because they don't feel safe at home, or they may have parents that are working all the time and they're home alone a lot.
Hello, how are you? Good.
We see so many young people in crisis. We see so many young people turn into alcohol and drugs, and it's because there's not enough support.
We got a shower today for something to do with our friends.
They like to have a laugh, they like to joke around.
Are you okay? Be careful.
And the conversations that we have surrounding school and family, alcohol, drug use, can then go on to, okay, so how can we support you?
Throughout the UK and Ireland, the Salvation Army has been recruiting and training detached youth workers. But youth workers and the resources they need are scarce. Local authority funding has been drastically cut in recent decades, and spending on young people's services is only a quarter of what it was at its peak. All this shows the importance of the Salvation Army's work.
She won't tell anyone because she'll forget in like 2 seconds.
Our aims are to build relationships, to get to know young people, to be a constant in their lives, to be a safe adult, because not all young people have a safe adult.
It's not what we're here for, is that?
So if we can be that constant in their lives, during the ups, during the downs of their lives, that's a major thing.
What is Australia's deadliest predator? The one that hits with more than 30 Gs of force. Strikes in under a second. Leaves catastrophic injury in its wake. You won't hear it, you won't see it, not until it's too late. Australia's deadliest predator isn't found in the wild. It's on our roads. Speeding is the killer.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
There is a problem with medicine, and we can explain what it is by looking back to the discovery of penicillin. Penicillin, it turns out, was not just an accidental finding. Alexander Fleming discovered that mold he found in a culture dish was killing bacteria, but it took over 10 years before a team at Oxford University were able to isolate the active ingredient. They produce small quantities for preclinical and clinical trials, helping prove the compound was safe and could beat infection. However, they couldn't produce it at scale. In 1941, Andrew Jackson Moyer of the US Department of Agriculture, the forerunner to the FDA, suggested changes to the manufacturing process, enabling mass production. It turns out medicines are not invented when someone discovers a new molecular entity. They are the product of key stakeholders working together collaboratively. Until medicine can be manufactured at scale, it may as well not exist. And in 2025, this is a problem. In the 1980s, pharmaceutical companies began outsourcing production. Suddenly the system was significantly less integrated. Someone with a new discovery today will find themselves disconnected from the rest of the development and manufacturing process. Companies that develop medicine are still happy to work with big established pharma companies, but the modern day Flemings are cut out of the system. The result is far fewer new medicines coming to market. We want to fix this by ensuring the pharma industry builds a more integrated supply chain. We also believe that doctors' expertise administering medicine should be included at the beginning of the process. We know that doctors on the front line have insights about how to repurpose medicine. Doctors should be able to report their findings so that the necessary testing can be completed and they can share their results worldwide. Learn more here and help us take medicines back to the future.
And welcome back to The World Today. Nice to have your company. I'm Mike Ryan. Bernie de Heldervang, who is a committed Christian, has a 40-plus year career in credit and political risk insurance. He worked as a diplomat based in East Africa, where he set up an official multilateral underwriting institution with the EU, Japanese and World Bank support, accredited to the UN to protect foreign investors and trading partners investing and doing business in Africa. Bernie joined the freedom movement in early 2020 as part of the Mike Yeadon campaign, and subsequently was in the original setup of heartgroup.org on its executive committee, where he is still today. He's a committed supporter of Swiss-style direct democracy, a podcaster under the name of Guilt_Elephant on X, and at Guilt Elephant on YouTube, and is a supporter and citizen of the Free Republic of Liberland. There's a mouthful. Bernie, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, mate. Good to see you, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, likewise. We're just going to talk about a few things. First of all, I'd like to talk to you about just your thoughts, just brief thoughts, and we'll go into it more next time around on the Chagos deal.
Yes. Well, it's very interesting what's been happening there on this PAC issue. But I think alongside that, I think there are still perhaps 4 reasons why this deal might not happen, and I can just sort of highlight those. First of all, in order for the UK Parliament to cede away sovereignty of a piece of land, a territory, it has to pass a bit of what's called enabling legislation, and that has to be a UK Act of Parliament. The UK government has been promising to do that, but has stalled it, and no one quite knows why. So that needs to happen, and that has to go through the Commons and the Lords in the normal way. That takes its time, even if they rush it through. We're now at the stage where the Lords have been hearing what's going on and have sent back the bill with some amendments that they want to put in place, 4 of them. So we're now at the ping pong factor where because of that process, the earliest possible time that if the Lords bottle it and decide to, if the Commons shoves it back and says no, we're not making any amendments, or we're making some but not all, and the Lords say okay, fine, we give in. Even then, the earliest it could be ratified is the 7th of March, and bearing in mind that 7th of May is the date of council elections. That's the absolute earliest, and 7th of May is the date of the UK council elections, well, English and Welsh council elections. So that's quite tight. Doesn't need much of a slip up. But if the Lords don't bottle it, and it doesn't look as if they're going to, because there's opposition growing domestically and abroad, obviously, as we know, and move to reject the bill, this gets quite complicated. They can reject it once per session of Parliament. So if the same bill is passed by the Commons in 2 successive parliamentary sessions and rejected by the Lords in both, and 1 year has elapsed, but I'm going to read this because 1 year has elapsed between the second reading and the first session and the passage in the second, the Commons can then invoke the Parliament Act of 1911 as amended in 1949 to send the bill for royal assent without the approval of the Lords. This basically means that the Lords can reject the bill twice, and that will take a year from when they last do it for that to go through. And the final thing, which is almost the most important, is that well, actually there's 2 others. The final thing is the 1996 treaty, which governs the use of Diego Garcia. The 1966 treaty between the US and the UK provides that the territory must remain under UK sovereignty, and the US needs to agree an amendment to that treaty with the UK in order for the UK to pass a treaty to cede it to Mauritius. And then there is one final one, which is the 5th thing, which is that the Mauritius is part of a treaty which is called it's known as the Pelindaba Treaty, which is signed by 50 states, most African states, and it basically says that the territory can't be used it can't house nuclear equivalent for any length of time. And there's some debate as to what that means. But in a sense, as soon as the territory is ceded to Mauritius, which, as we know, never owned it, it's only ceded to Mauritius because the governor of the islands happened to live in Mauritius, never belonged to Mauritius when it was a UK colony. So the US regularly uses Diego Garcia for B-2 and B-52 stealth bombers, for nuclear-powered submarines, for submarine tenders and cruise missile platforms. And there is a ban on using nuclear on the island under that treaty, which you can't. I mean, it's going to take 50 states have to agree to amend the island's use to nuclear, which I would think is a good reason why the US might not want to agree to the deal as well. So there's quite a lot that still needs to happen, quite apart from all the stuff that's being dug up about what Mandelson did where and who's benefiting it from it. So that's an account through.
Very grubby, isn't it? Do you think? What's your gut feeling? Do you think it will go through?
I have my doubts at the moment. I think that Starmer's got 2 problems. One is he knows that he needs to get the US treaty amended, and he knows that that Trump has only recently woken up to the fact that this treaty perhaps isn't quite as good as he thought it was for the US, and he knows that there's a problem with the nuclear issue. I don't think he wants to do another U-turn. It would be his 16th. And I think he's wrong if he does it right, and he's right if he does it wrong. He's wrong if he does it wrongly. He can't win on this one, whichever way he turns. So I wonder whether he's engineering it either to kick it into the long grass because of UK elections, or because it gets stuck in a negotiation with the Americans, so that he can say it's not my fault. We tried to do it. We were stopped by the Americans. But I would wonder whether he really wants to have another U-turn, and B, such a hot potato on his hands that he's going to get blamed for by the electorate as look how incompetent this man is. Yet another error.
What about sorry?
Go on.
My fault. I just want to know, what about the potential conflicts of interest that might exist?
Yes, I mean, I wonder whether that's as important. I mean, he seems to be quite good at ignoring those. Whether he thinks that's as important as the legal aspects of getting he's very law-driven, as the legal issues that might stop it from happening. I think those issues will. I mean, there is so much news coming out daily; it's hard to keep up. from all the Epstein stuff, that I'm sure it'll come up, and people are focusing on it and writing reports and memos on it and sending it out. So if there's genuinely some hanky-panky there, then that will come out, and that could be another reason why it's delayed or doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'd say I was talking to a previous guest, and the Epstein stuff. It's like trying to predict the future. Normally, you look into a cup of tea. The green tea leaves, and it says you're going that way, grasshopper. This is just like looking into pig's swill. And when we talk about Epstein, anything connected to Epstein, I don't know how you feel, but I feel dirty almost. Like it's sort of like the smell of a skunk. It's
very grubby.
Yeah, it is very grubby indeed. And to see that former Prince Andrew and the very highest of your government have been implicated or look like they might be implicated. Can you just tell me why this deal is so important to Starmer?
I don't really think that I can work out, and don't really want to think that I could work it out when getting into his head, but I can only imagine that it is his obsession with all matters legal that he thinks are more important than anything else, and that he's blamed the Tories for setting it up, which is also true because the Tories did. He sort of inherited something which he thinks he has to pursue, and doesn't believe that he could legitimately close this down, which he can, because we know that the ICJ's judgment is not binding on the UK. So I think it is his concept of governing is being a lawyer who practices law in office, but doesn't have a really much of a political nous. And I think he thinks if he complies with, and we've seen there are two tiers to this because he doesn't seem to do it consistently. If he complies with the law as he sees it or as he's advised it should be, then he's in the right. And I think that's where he is. And I also think he lives in some self-assumed guilt about colonial Britain of the past, and that we all need to pay reparations forever to get rid of all that, which is an asinine view given the damage that's going to do and the amount of damages that could be paid if we adopted that process.
We've just lost Bernie. You come back to us in a second. I was just thinking we're going to talk about now. We'll talk about the under 16 social media ban, which is what can I say? They've done it here in Australia, and most have gotten around it. And for those in the UK, if you're under 16, please, I implore you to put your fingers in your ear and not listen to what I'm going to say. And parents, you should do the same thing. In fact, everybody should put their fingers in their ear. I said ear. It doesn't work in Australia, and it doesn't work in Australia because they got around it. Parents have helped these under 16s use their own accounts or given their own permission and things like that. So it doesn't actually work. And if it doesn't work, then what's the point of it? The point of it is, when Bernie comes back, the point of it is, and he's back again, Bernie, this under 16 ban, I was just saying when you dropped out, and thank you for coming back too, by the way.
Sorry about that. I thought I'd turned my phones off completely, but somehow I didn't.
No, I was doing some fast dancing, let me tell you. But they've done it in Australia, and there's two parts. It's done it in Australia. All reports it has not worked because the parents have been helping their children access social media, with new accounts and stuff. And even though there's been an enormous amount of accounts cancelled, new ones have popped up. So it hasn't worked. Part two of that, though, is that government now has a better idea who's doing what on the internet, who's logging in, going to that, and all the data is sent to government. Of course, they don't keep that. I just saw Of course they do. They're going to do the same thing in the UK. What's your views on the under 16 media ban? Do you think it'll be implemented? I can tell you, and this, if you and I go back 300, well, in my case, not very long at all. In your case, 300 years ago. No, but if you go back, we used to do things that you're not supposed to do, and you always worked ways around to be able to do it. And that's just human nature of kids. Don't do that, they go and do it. That makes the joys of parenthood, which I don't know much about, but the joys of parenthood is that don't do that and they'll go and do it. So we have in Australia parents and kids using other ways, other means of getting around it. And sure, they've chopped off a whole bunch of accounts, but new ones have popped up. The UK, I see exactly that. Kids are they're very clever. And parents, if the kid annoys the parents enough, they'll give them their own account. Do you think it'll come into being after what I've said? And secondly, do you think it'll be successful? And for what purpose are they doing this really?
Well, that's some good questions. I mean, I think this government will introduce it. I think it's bouncing back and forwards in cabinet and in Parliament. I think they will do it. They're committed to doing it. I think they're in lockstep with Australia. There's obviously quite a close connection between Starmer and Albanese, and so they will try. I think that, to my mind, the reason isn't what it's set out to be. I think the reason is that this is a route in, an inevitability to a route into digital ID, if we all have to, you and I have to get on the wires and give proof that we're over 18 or over 16 to get into certain websites or get into any websites, depending on what form that ID has to be delivered, and there's the rub, then we become part of a digital ID system that we don't want to be part of. And if the young will do it more naturally because they're more used to that, used to tech, and they won't perhaps even think about what the risks are they're taking, and they might not be being supervised, then if you've delayed digital ID until the under 16s from today become adults, well, you've just delayed the project by a few years, by a few decades. But the project will still go ahead, and I think that's the ultimate reason. They can't really implement all the Agenda 21 things until they have digital ID. To me, the other interesting thing is the way around this at the moment is using VPNs, and as you said earlier, the kids are quite smart. They can either download one, or they can borrow a mate's account, or they're using their mother's or father's email account. And in some cases, I would think parents would probably be in favour of that, but those that don't want digital ID to be all over the place, they might actually prefer an account to be used that isn't that of their children. So I would have thought that they're not alone in that. But if currently the way to do it is through VPNs, and I saw that there was a surge of something like 170% of VPN downloads in December when the law became came into force in Australia in December 2025, and then it fell back a bit. Then, if they try to put some sort of registration process around VPNs, we're back to the same thing. That VPNs aren't going to be illegal, but VPNs can only be used by people over 18, or you have to have digital ID before you do. So that throws into question some other problems, because 16-year-olds, under 16-year-olds some of them will have children's banks, and they'll be operating junior bank accounts on the back of their parents' accounts, and they may be able to move money around and they have to use IG to do that. And if they can't use a VPN, it puts the whole system under threat potentially. So I don't think this is fully baked or thought through. I think when it comes into the UK, I think that's what they'll try to do. They'll try to prohibit the use of VPNs, or they'll try to make them as part of another registration process. But I think there'll still be ways around it, as there always are.
Yeah, I actually see this. I mean, if you look at when I was talking to a guest before about go back to COVID, and there was a sort of a lockstep from governments around the world And then some went a bit further in reducing liberties, and others caught up anyway. They're about heading towards the pointy end at the moment, and they're probably neck to neck. Who's going to make it to the finish line? And that's in control, because a shadow minister here in Australia, for the Conservatives of all people, said that government must control the internet. And by controlling the internet, you actually curtail free speech, not selective speech, but free speech. And if you curtail free speech, and you know who's saying what and who, and we have new laws coming out now that which very, very similar to the UK, for anybody to have any sort of free speech or to be able to move from A to B. And you look at your 15-minute cities too. There's all these means to control the good folk of any country. And that in itself, I think, is the very essence of all these things happening. Yeah. Because if you want to control people, first of all, cut off the source of information. The under 16s and under, they'll get around it however they want to. Yeah. But then that is not what it's about. It's to be able to find out where you are, what you're doing, Bernie, what you're browsing, the amount of times you have to log in, because every time you log in, it's now down for the government to see and use, and to work out the algorithms to what you are doing, how dangerous you are, to what they want to do. And if you look at all the countries around the world, and even the US, I was looking at a video today, and Pam Bondi was being asked a whole bunch of questions from Thomas Massey in regards to the Epstein files. Didn't answer one question. She just threw back garbage at him, called him a failed politician and a Trump syndrome thingo, and just went, but didn't answer any questions. And she's the Attorney General, who also said about 2 months ago, we have to stamp out hate speech, which means you are going to stamp out free speech. So all these things are coming together, and I think we have this terrible, terrible problem on how do we stop it. And we won't stop it. We'll work out ways of getting around things, but you're not going to stop a government from going from A to B, B to C, and so forth. They're going to do it, whether it's quick or slow. They're going to do it. Creep comes in, bills are pushed through, little amendments to it that we don't see, and before you know it, you, me, and everybody else will end up in jail, or you'll have no internet. You'll be under house arrest or whatever, and that is all part of the plan, I believe. And that's not a conspiracy theory. Just look at all the countries around the world, and you see they are lockstep together, marching like an army from like the Third Reich. And that's what they're doing. That's my view.
I completely agree. It looks exactly the same to me. And it doesn't seem to matter what flavour the government is that's coming in. They seem to be doing the same thing, roughly the same time. Slightly out of sync in terms of how they're addressing it, but everything is. You could be in any of the countries that we've talked about, former Western libertarian democracies, and the same thing is happening. There's stuff being implemented in Hungary on digital ID and on vaccines, which is really surprising given how Viktor Orban is absolutely adamant that he wants to have freedom of government outside what's happening within the EU, where he doesn't agree. So none of it really makes any sense unless you look at the wider aim that the WEF and UNESCO and UN have put forward. So I agree with you. I mean, I don't think they'll succeed, because human nature is, as you say, is good at getting around these things. But it's going to be a painful journey, and we're going to have to make some sacrifices. And the more people that decide not to make those sacrifices, and for an easy life, let's just sign up to this. And the more difficult it will be for those that remain who don't sign up to it. And I hope that people don't bottle it. We need to fight this, because there's only one fight. There's only really one issue left, and that is digital ID. Because once they've got that, they've got control of everything else.
Look at your cameras. You've got more cameras than a camera store. everywhere. I
What's
mean,
happened?
but look at your 15-minute cities in Oxford. I had a guy on the other day who says, "Oh, they're pretty good. I like this 15-minute city thing." I thought, what have you been drinking? It's obviously not tea. Look, Bernie, if somebody wants to find out more about you, we have run out of time, but how would they do that? How do they find out? Besides going to guilt_elephant on X and guilt elephant on YouTube. By the way, how are you going with YouTube? We're having a disastrous time. They don't like us. We've actually seen our numbers disappear in
Well,
front of us.
I
It's
mean,
like, oh, wow.
I'm too small a fish for them to appear in the algorithm. I think there's a stepped up, and I've only done sort of half a dozen podcasts so I've got very small viewers, and I think I'm just under the radar. But at some point, we'll maybe try to put this segment on it and see what happens. But I'm pretty likely to get clobbered at some point when I'm more popular. But that's where I am. I'm on Rumble as well, same names, but. I do most of what I do on Twitter, and then I do some podcasts on YouTube. I tend to do them. They go out live on Twitter and on YouTube, and it's all about alternative medicine. It's about freedoms. It's the usual stuff. Quite enjoy doing it. Still got a full-time job, but quite enjoy doing it, and I hope that it makes a difference. I don't know whether it does or not, but one can only hope.
If you don't try, you'll never succeed. And whether it's 1 or 100 or 1,000,000, if you can affect someone's life, then you're doing the right thing. That's all it is, isn't it? And we have to do good. I mean, part of our mantra with, remember, TNT Radio, which you were a guest of, the underlying goal was to do good. And we had truly no agenda except to tell the truth. And I was quoted after we had the pin pulled from under us. I was quoted or the rug pulled, that I said that people don't want the truth, and many don't. They want to they go to various podcasters and presenters, and they'll believe what that person says. And I think the responsibility of people on air, whether it's alternate or whether it's a legacy, I think they need to be, they've got a great responsibility. What we're doing now is a gift, and I always appreciate it. I think it's magnificent how we can get our word out. So whether it's you, Bernie, or Tucker Carlson, or whatever, we actually have to tell the truth, not my truth or your truth, the truth, and do good. Simple as that.
I totally agree. I disagree with this concept of people telling their truth. There is only one truth. There's only one truth.
If it's their truth, it's most likely a lie, isn't it?
Yeah, quite. It's an odd word to use. So I think sometimes people conflate their truth with their story. Now, they may have an individual story, but that story is either true or not true. So the truth is paramount. And that's all we can do, and hope that enough people pick it up and enough people begin to see. I think people are frightened. They're just frightened, and I understand why they're frightened. It's not a very comfortable position to be in. But when you think at what might happen if we don't try to resist this, we're not going to stop it unless we try to resist it and get in the way. The UK has still got over its head this issue of directors having to register by digital ID. I've refused to do it, so I've dissolved my company. I lost tens of thousands in tax credits, which is very annoying. But I don't want to be. It's not. It was a hobby company. I do some expert witnessing through it and various other advisory stuff. But I just don't want to be on with digital ID, and so I've given it up. Now I'm just working as a sole trader. They haven't got to those yet.
Not yet. But one day you'll hear, hello at the door, and that's it. You'll be joining me.
And the banks are interesting too, because some of the banks, I have a number of different current accounts just to keep myself in a position where I can jump if I have to. And some of the banks are moving more into we need you to regularly update your ID, and one of them that I'm looking at the moment looks very, I'm not going to mention a name, but it looks very like it's trying to go down what looks like digital ID. So I've been in correspondence and said, if you do that, I'm gone, I'm done. No, that's fine, you don't have to do it. It's all okay. But they keep sending the reminders, and I mean, I would just move. If it's a very useful account, it's international. It's one of the newer challenger type banks. But I am with a building society over here. You'll be familiar with that concept because I think it existed in Australia for a while too, which runs current accounts, and they have an old-fashioned but very safe system of authentication. They've pledged not to close any more branches in the next 5 years, whatever it is. And they have said we will not go down enforced digital ID. And being a building society that you're effectively a shareholder of, if you're part of, you have the ability to vote that away. So I think there are routes and there are alternatives, and it is going to be uncomfortable, but there's only one chance of stopping it, and that's if enough of us resist.
There is, and if that fails, a good whiskey. It doesn't have to be good. Just as it's whiskey.
Always a solution.
Always
a solution, Mike.
I think 100% proof. They probably call it petrol. Bernie de Holdevang, thank you so much for your time. I could some other terrible liners there. I won't go into that. Otherwise, I'll never get to Jerry. And if I don't get to Jerry, I'll never hear the end of it. This is the world today.
Makers are facing more travel.
When we're on the go, it's easy to go into our own world. Keep your mind on the road.
Our beautiful world is changing, withering, dying by the hands of those who don't value nature, even though we all depend on it for life itself. But there is hope. Together with caring friends, the Nature Conservancy can restore our lands, heal our waters, and save our wildlife with big solutions only nature can provide. But every day we lose more of the places we love, and we urgently need to save endangered lands, waters, and wild species. The actions we take today will determine the tomorrow we leave to our children and grandchildren. The water they drink, the air they breathe, the beauty they experience. To learn more about how you can help protect and conserve our beautiful world, visit nature.org today.
Asthma is a growing problem, especially among children. Asthma affects the quality of life for millions like me every single day. My name is Chris Draft, and I have asthma. And I've spent more than a decade in the NFL tackling asthma on and off the field. Join me in the EPA in helping people control their asthma. Asthma is a lung condition that can be controlled through medication and by avoiding things that can make it worse. 3 steps are the solution to controlling asthma. Step 1, talk to a doctor. Step 2, make a plan. And step 3, get rid of things that can make it worse. Asthma can be tackled. For more information on asthma, log on to epa.gov/asthma.
We're today's News Talk, the world today.
And welcome back, by the way. We had our painters out. They painted and put new colours in our chat out with the spray paint. No, Cam did that. Very good. See, all that idle time. Anyway, our chat is up and running. I can now talk. I can type away. Cam, very creative there, Cam. And well done too. Nice red colour. So if you want to have a comment, talk to us on chat, please do. And I'll do my best to answer your questions or at least reply back to you on chat. Dr. Jerry Waters was temporarily, I think he still is, I'll find out in a second, struck off by the Irish Medical Council for refusing to administer COVID-19 vaccines. He remains suspended, so he's still temporarily struck off and is in a long-running legal dispute with the council for a return of his licence. He is still suspended because the Irish Medical Council have to take him to the High Court to return his licence, although telling him in March, last March, they were withdrawing the charges. Don't wait too long. In the meantime, Dr. Waters is trying to get on with his badly disrupted life. He recently attended a pretty interesting conference with some well-known medicos and also freedom advocates from the COVID-19 times, way back then, to discuss a number of matters, including the treatment of COVID vaccine injuries. Do we remember those poor people, or have they also been sent to the dustbins of history by our esteemed medical and scientific establishment? Dr. Jerry, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to see you, Mike. How are you? Are you well?
I am very well, and I should say that to my doctor because, well, you are my doctor at the moment, because otherwise you'll call my wife and say that I've been a very bad patient, which I have been, by the way. Jerry, tell me about the conference you were at.
Yeah, I was in Guernsey. Most people don't know where Guernsey is, but it's one of the Channel Islands. It's kind of stuck between France and England. It's fundamentally it's English. It's English speaking, but and very English, and has been English for, well, I don't know exactly whether it's hundreds or thousands of years, but it was invaded by the Germans and during the Second World War. It's a kind of difficult place to get to, but well worth getting there. But the conference itself, there were some fabulous people there, and I was thrilled. It was nice thing about it was kind of it was over 4 or 5 days, which meant that you'd plenty of time to chat to people. Peter McCullough was there, Angus Dougleash, Del Bigtree. Who else? Del Bigtree, and a particularly nice person, Neil Oliver. You know, the Coast to Coast guy on BBC. So we had a fabulous time, and the topic of this morning's discussion is theoretically treatment of COVID vaccine, and that was discussed at length. So it was very timely. It was serendipitous that, in effect, I was at a conference discussing this and reading up on it and thinking about it. Along you came and said, let's discuss this. So it's a topic that could literally take hours. The introduction to it would be 15, 20 minutes. But it was great to meet those people, and somebody like Del Bigtree that you expect to be sort of important is a fabulous guy, a lovely person.
He is a very nice guy, Del. So is Peter McCullough.
Peter's dead on, yeah.
We had, when we were TNT Radio and TNT, he would come on a lot, but before that, we had a show called Asia Pacific Today. Asia Pacific Today, and we had Dolores Cahill and all those on, and Peter McCullough. And Peter was he was a very brave person. He did the right thing, and so you had some great people there. But tell me, what about the takeaways? You mentioned you could talk about it for hours, but just some of the main points from the conference.
Well, you see, the principal problem is that we don't know what was injected in. We actually don't know what was injected in. It was tested. It wasn't even properly tested on animals. So we don't, A, we don't know what was injected in. But B, we don't know what effect it has. Because these were totally new concepts. These gene therapy concepts. And basically, a gene therapy. Now, people object to using the word therapy because they say, there's nothing good about it. But it was developed, the messenger RNA was developed to treat cancers. And so too with the adenovirus one. So it's two different products, but fundamentally they're the same thing. To endeavor to change your body, to change your cells, each cell in your body, to produce what they call a vaccine, but it then turns out that it's not a vaccine. It's far from a vaccine. And even by changing the definition of the word vaccine, they still don't turn it into a vaccine. It's not. It's a gene therapy or a gene altering therapy that in effect produces a spike protein. So my takeaway from the weekend was that the spike protein is a toxin. it damages the cells. It damages with every cell. And unfortunately, after injecting this in, it appears, well, without a doubt, it doesn't appear, but it's definite that they altered the messenger RNA and the spike protein, so it goes on and is still in your system 3, 4, perhaps 5 years later, which is catastrophic. So the question is, how do you treat it? That's what I'm here for. How do you treat it? I don't know definitively, but primarily because the only way you know whether any medication or any intervention works is through double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. And these are not things that can be done by companies. These are things that have to be done by government, and the government won't do them, primarily because the government won't admit that there is a problem, primarily because the government were complicit in the crime. So, they're not going to solve the problem. They're not even going to admit that there's a problem yet. Oh, they will. They have to, because the problems are myriad. There are millions of I dread to use the word vaccine, but you forgive me for using it at this stage. Vaccine injured people out there, and the widows and widowers of people who have died from it. These people cannot be ignored. These people can't be dumped into the dustbin of history. They have to be acknowledged. So the question is, how do you get about destroying or preventing the production of the spike protein initially? Now, there are lots of other problems, because not only did they put in a messenger RNA that programmed your body to make spike protein, but to get it into your cells, they had to use what we call liponanoparticles. And liponanoparticles are tiny, tiny, tiny little bubbles of fatty tissue that carry the messenger RNA into your cells to get it in there. Otherwise, your immune system would attack them, and it destroys your immune system. So here, that's where we come into a lot of the cancers, a lot of the autoimmune problems, because of the liponanoparticles. It's all very, very well. It's difficult to follow for the layman. It's difficult to follow for the doctor. But the bottom line is, you've got to treat the spike protein. You've got to try and take it out of your system. Now, I've been very, very slow to endorse or to go along with any of these things, primarily because there aren't proper studies on it. But the more I see of it and the more I listen. See, the problem is, of course, if somebody has cancer, you can't leave it for another 3 months or another 6 months to get it right. So it would appear that there's some progress or anecdotal evidence to suggest that things like nattokinase and intermittent fasting, and there's a number of drugs and a number of products, and there's quite a number of interventions that appear to be very, very promising. And given that these things are terminal, you've got to get in there. So if I'd taken the injection, and B, I would invariably now have spike proteins and that in my body, I would go down the road, and that's where I'd be going. I'd be getting on. So, like talking about Peter McCullough. Like, Peter is a good guy. This guy, at breakfast with him, we chatted, we laughed, we had good fun. I would say Peter McCullough is fundamentally a honest person, and he's involved in a company called the Wellness Company. This is not an ad for the Wellness Company, but Peter and a group of people are working very, very hard within the limitations of a private company rather than a government. And they are trying to put together, and the core of this is kind of nattokinase. That's where you start, but then you've got to add in lots of other things. It's quite interesting.
Well, we interviewed or had many chats with Dolores Cahill. At the onset of this terrible pandemic. We're all going to die. We're all going to kill Grandma. It's just terrible. I still haven't gotten over that. My grandma had passed away about 15 years beforehand, but the thought of me killing Grandma again was just, it's one of those terrible things. But anyway, and she said, because she still is an epidemiologist, an immunologist, and she used to advise many of the countries in the EU and other places. So she knew what she was talking about. And she said the majority of people who get the vaccine, this is going back 5 years now, the majority of people who get the vaccine, it would have worked this way. If you're older and you got the vaccine, and I'm just using that word, it is not a vaccine. If you are older, the mortality rate will be way more immense, intense. You'll have many more people who will fall off the perch. They'll get that with cancers and stuff like that, heart attacks. And if you are younger, it will knock off 10 years of your life, and you will have the quality of your life will be much more lessened than you would normally. So, and that was 5 years ago. I mean, can you just tell me if she was wrong at all? I don't think she was wrong at all. I think she has hit the nail on the head. She hit it. She said the right thing 5 years ago, and now we find that the people are getting cancers. Kids are dying younger. Older people who got the shot. I look at my dad and these people, and he was a good age anyway. But there is no reason to take this inverted commas vaccine or gene therapy, because all it's going to do is do you harm.
Yeah, Dolores. I love the way you refer to her as Dolores Cahill. We call her Cahill.
Sorry about that.
Dolores
It's
Cahill.
Aussie, you see, Aussie.
Yeah. Dolores is a fabulous person, highly intelligent, and a good friend of mine. Dolores, at the time she made those statements, I disagreed with her making the statements. I didn't necessarily agree with her what she said in the statements. They were horrifying. I think Dolores kind of got it slightly wrong in her timing, but I think she got everything else right. She kind of said that, I was listening to it there recently, and it kind of said most people will be dead for between 3 and 5 years. Well, obviously not, but it's the timing. So if Dolores got anything wrong, it was a temple matter. She, I think she was dead right and a massive understanding it. I think she anticipated that they would kill people just quicker rather than at the rate they're doing. But no, Dolores Cahill was fundamentally right. And as I say, at the time, I was thinking, Dolores, that's terribly, terribly frightening and very, very negative. But she's a fabulous person and massively honest and massively educated and informed. And Dolores is also a good person. When we started this all out, Dolores gave me kind of tutorials to sort of wrinkle out my ignorance. And she's good. Well, I'm a GP, as I said to Peter McCullough at the meeting. Peter, you're the Pope, and I'm a parish priest. I see what's going on the ground floor, and you see it, internationally. We've got a different. Angus Douglas is a cardinal, mind you. Maybe he's a pope as well. Well, you can't have two popes, but we did have two popes for a while, didn't we?
That's right, we did.
We did. So what I'm saying, that's the difference. Somebody like me sees it on the ground. 300,000 consultations in 47, 48 years. You see a lot of people. I say I'm a parish priest, whereas those people are kind of cardinals and that. We've got a different perspective, but we still come at it, end up in the same place.
Yeah, Dolores is great. The funny little story, Dolores would be touring Europe. I won't tell you why she's doing that, but she's touring Europe. And she'd do her shows when we were just audio, just radio, and she would do. And for some reason, I've got no idea, her connection was really bad, and everybody else's was really good. And at the end, we had to pull it because it was, because if you're traveling Europe quickly from place to place. Anyway, it just didn't work out. So Dolores was convinced that we censored her. It's like, no, we wouldn't censor you. We want you. And in fact, now if we get the second iteration of TNT back shortly under another name, we would welcome Dolores back with open arms.
Oh yeah.
And she always promised me a tour of her castle.
Oh yeah, she's got a
And
castle down in the
I
thigh.
want
Yeah.
to see. I want to see that castle. I
The
want
one
to
thing
see.
you have to realise about Dolores, she doesn't suffer fools gladly.
No.
She says it as it is, and she's very upfront. But that's such a lovely characteristic of her. She says
Right.
it as it is, and if you say something stupid or you cross her, she lets you know.
She is the loveliest lady. Anyway, and my wife used to like her very much too, and so did Jen. We all loved her very much. So, when you bump into her next, tell her I still want to see the castle, and not to make me swim in the moat, because it might have a few sharks.
I might see her today. I might just see her today because I'm going into Marcus de Broom's case. I'm heading out immediately to get in to see Marcus. Marcus is undergoing a kangaroo court with the Irish Medical Council because he objected to the whole fiasco. And as it happens, to commemorate that, I have a tie of boxing kangaroos. So I'm wearing this shirt in.
Is
I'm
it made
wearing
in
this tie
China?
in as to the kangaroo court.
Is it made in China? Have a look.
Sunshine ties Australia. It doesn't say. I wouldn't. I'm not going to admit to it anyway. If I do find it, I'm most likely going to lie. I say no, it's made in Australia. I doubt it, but
Good on you. Now, Jerry, Dr. Jared Waters, if somebody wants to find out more about you, because we've run out of time, how do they do that?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. Tell us.
Sorry, oh yeah. Well, basically, I go out to Twitter. I've got something like 56,000 followers on Twitter, and it's Dr. Gerard Waters 'GP at O'Tourisk OTURRISK O'Tourisk.
Tell me, how did you do it? We always ask people because Elon Musk doesn't like us. We're regarded as extreme because we have both sides. You can't do that this day and age. But we actually, because we used to have, anyway, long story short, we're tier one, which means tier one means that they want you to go away or jump into a volcano. But so if you can just put in a good word for us, Jerry, with Elon, we would love to be welcomed back.
Yeah, well, I would like to go and express this widely. I'd like to go to the White House on St. Patrick's Day as the Irish representative rather than Conor McGregor. I think I would represent Ireland better than Conor does. No, nothing against Conor. We're from just around the corner from one another. We just took different tracks, different roads, literally 100 yards, 200 yards away from one another. We were born and reared. So as I say, if I would love to go to the White House and shake hands. I put that to the American guys to shake hands with anybody in the White House, just to get it up, just to give the finger to the Irish government. It wouldn't it be funny, the suspended doctor. So that's what I'm pushing now.
I'm shocked.
I would swim to Washington.
I'm shocked that you would say things like that. Yeah, we're a family show, Jerry. Thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate it. We'll chat again later. And you are right, Peter McCullough and the others, they're all fantastic. And Del Bigtree, what a great communicator. Not only a very good communicator, and good on him too. That's the end of it, by the way. You've finished now, Jerry. This has been The World Today. Nice to have your company, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. If you want to get hold of Dr. Jerry, you have to meet him at the White House, apparently. That's it for me. I'll catch you tomorrow. Have a great one, and see you tomorrow.